Hey guys, it's PokeDude here with Misaki, and welcome back to Witch on the Holy Night. Now you might be wondering why I'm starting here and not on the title screen. Well, that's because when you boot the game up, every time after the first, something special happens that longtime Type Moon fans have not seen in a very long time. That jingle is very nostalgic for longtime fans. You didn't get to see it during our previous streams, Misaki, because of how the screen share worked, but that plays every time you boot up one of the old VNs.
Mhm.
Although, then again, I guess anyone who caught the times where the game crashed and we had to reboot also heard it then, but yeah. Ah, when I first played this, I was like, oh man, I haven't heard that in like 10 years. All right. Anyway, let's continue. All right. Next episode. Chapter 2, Little Happening of Last Night. The city really is strange, but a pretty easy place to live once you get the hang of it.
Sojiro sighed listlessly. He looked down at the winter schoolyard below, lost in thought. December was written on the corner of the chalkboard. He could not believe 10 days ago had already passed since he transferred to the school. The last vestiges of autumn had faded with the change of the month. The trees were all but barren, and the ground below them a mat of fallen leaves. Fourth period was classics. An elderly teacher stood at the lectern and rambled on. While he had finally gotten used to the classroom, he still had a long way to go to get up to speed his classes. Lacking even the basic understanding most students learn in their early scholastic life, it was a battle for Sojiro to keep up. Even if he was unable to grasp all the content right away, he at least tried to memorize everything in the hope that he could make use of it down the road. Which is why losing himself in his thoughts was about the last thing he should have been doing. He would normally chastise himself for daydreaming, but
Haha.
troublingly, he was unable to concentrate in class today. Sojiro could not place the source of his lack of concentration. It could not have been the winter in the city. It was much milder than in the mountains. Neither was his part-time job particularly tiring. He was not any more physically fatigued than the average student, so that could not be it either. Others might conclude that it was because the courses were boring, but that seemed off the mark too. Sojiro did not share his classmates' opinions about their classes. On the contrary, he rather enjoyed his class time. No, his frame of mind was not to blame either. Trying to figure out what was wrong only made him more depressed.
What's wrong with me? It's not like me to be so distracted.
He scolded himself and turned his attention to the chalkboard. The rhythmic ticks of the chalk were sending him into a slumber, but he somehow managed to resist their lullaby. And yet, he was still unable to focus on the class.
Ugh.
Sojiro reflected silently, as was his custom, and sighed inwardly. Deep down, he knew the real source of his agitation. The events of the previous night were the only thing that it could be. With the chime to signal the end of class, the teacher bowed and exited to the hallway. To see him off, the 30 or so students all stood up from their desks. The clock, which had seemed to slow dramatically around 11:30, now struck noon. The tension seemed to fade from the room all at once. The release from a difficult lesson was the start of lunchtime, the highlight of school life. Misaki High's cafeteria was not particularly known for its quality of food. Ouch. Complaints that the quality was below that of a private school went unheeded. And the same unique flavors appeared on the menu each and every day. Private school prices coupled with the subpar quality led to the majority of students to opt for box lunches instead. Sojiro's class 2C was no exception. The boys muscled as much as 10 desks into what resembled a long dining table. Conversely, the girls divided themselves into smaller tables of 2 or 3 desks with practiced ease and started chatting within their cliques. Not a single student wasted even a second of their precious lunchtime. Where both sides differed in method, they shared a common goal. Sojiro was struck dumb by the efficiency of the transformation. Even after 10 days, he was unable to keep pace with the rest of the class and remained seated where he had sat during the previous period.
Hey, Shizuki, over here.
The voice came from the large makeshift dining table near the window. Hosuke Kinomi was beckoning him over while leaning back in his chair in a way that looked like he could fall back at any second. He was regularly shot down by others in the class for being lazy and crass, but his earnest nature kept him from getting on anyone's bad side. Though something could be said for not being so forthcoming all the time, too.
Time's a wasting. Let's eat. Got a bunch of leftover spring rolls from yesterday, but when my dad saw them, he told me I shouldn't waste them, so that's the only thing I got.
Seemed his endgame was to find someone who might take pity on him and trade him for something better. The two of them worked at the same restaurant, so he was one of the few people Sojiro knew before starting school. He was also the reason Sojiro was able to learn the true meaning of the phrase, "can't live with them, can't live without them." So he started working before school.
Yeah. Yeah, Shizuki, get your butt over here. It's the long-awaited canned food festival today. So we're really going through with this? We're absolutely sure we want to do this? You bet your ass we are. Sure, this stuff is processed to hell, but the canned crab you can eat? All the canned crab you can eat? That ain't no sardines in a can, dude. You for real? Yeah, count me in. Is there enough corned beef for everyone? Or is it first come, first served? That's not something you can eat a ton of, you know. Only the first can tastes any good. With Shizuki on board, we'd be at an even 7 cans apiece. What a lifesaver. So what's up with your lunch, Kinomi? It looks harder than the cans.
Are they just eating cold canned food?
I think so.
The boys usually passed the time by making fun of each other's lunches, but today, they were united against a common foe. A pyramid of countless cans stood in the middle of the table. They had all been taken from the pantry of a certain student's house, and the expiration dates on them had all been scribbled out with a marker. Oh, that is dangerous.
Alright, lads, everyone got your can openers? Eating them sucks. No one likes leftovers, but these metal demons must be slain at all costs, even if it means missing 5th period. I want a special thanks to our sponsors, Downtown McCoy and Nakayama Market. Yeah, baby, let's eat.
The boys united as one and hoisted their can openers into the air.
Eat up, Shizuki. There's enough can openers to go around. I thought I told you yesterday I'm not interested in being your taste tester. And besides, at least half of those cans are past their expiration date. Ah, come on, live a little.
Quite an inexplicably excited group of guys. Their real motivation seemed to be to spread the pain. Of course. But moved by their energy and conceding defeats, Sojiro got up from his seat and joined them. And before he could...
This is the girls.
Hey, give it a rest, why don't you? Forget them, Shizuki. Come eat with us. Another interested party joined the fray. A girl with short but stylish hair had called out to him. She had also tried to get Sojiro to join the track and field club several days earlier.
Thanks for the offer, but I'd rather not.
He answered with a troubled look on his face. On the table was nothing but a pile of fruit Sojiro had never seen before. What? Why? You don't like papayas? We got mango and coconut if you want something else. And don't tell anyone, but we've even got Yubari melon.
So, when I first read this scene, I was like, tropical fruits and potential food poisoning. That definitely sounds like Misaki.
Yep. The members of the fruit group pumped their fists in unison at the last delicacy. Wait, coconuts? Can you even eat those? I like the mango if you have any extra. Idiots! Meat! Meat! Eating anything else is just gonna make you weak. Sojiro couldn't keep track of all the voices flying across the room.
All I know is nothing good will come out of either of these choices.
That being said, he found it difficult to refuse them outright. His tendency to accept others' goodwill at face value occasionally left him frozen with indecision. Not accustomed to regular human interaction, he was unable to judge when it was or was not appropriate to turn someone down. Someone tapped the lost little lamb on the shoulder.
Don't mind them. If you get involved with every idiot who invites you to do something, you'll mess up your whole life. It's okay to turn them down, you know. And you guys, stop trying to lead this good soul over to the dark side.
An inappropriately loud voice echoed throughout the classroom from behind him.
Vice President.
Sojiro turned around to see a boy about a head taller than him. His long hair, well unkempt, had been brushed back, giving it an appealingly windswept look. His attractive features belied the contempt for the classroom his eyes carried. Unlike the perpetually dopey-looking Sojiro, he was an extremely attractive boy. Poor Sojiro! Capable of captivating anyone who had so much as glanced at him. In most cases, such a boy's presence would be met with the awe and respect. However...
Oh look, our mighty Vice President has graciously decided to pay us a visit. I thought you were going to take
up residence in the cafeteria, so you wouldn't have to see our stupid faces anymore.
Have you lost your way, Your Highness? You're summoned where the commoners eat gruel from their troughs. Or troughs. Shouldn't you be sipping tea with the babes from Class A? Why don't you leave Shizuki... Oh, wait,
Or why don't you leave Shizuki alone, huh? First Lady Aoko has it in for him. Now His Highness too? What could he have done to earn the attention of such royalty?
Really? But Shizuki's such a goody two-shoes. He's never broken any rules. Well, the rules of the school, at least.
Wait, could it be that Tsukiji really switched teams after Aozaki rejected him? They continued to give him a hard time. Sojiro could not help but feel sorry for him. The class vice president, on the other hand, showed absolutely no reaction whatsoever. He glared at them with a bored look and simply raised his voice.
You freaks should get some new material. Why don't you spend your time more productively for once? Like helping with the special winter cleaning team. Yeah, you heard me. Only one student in the entire school has signed up so far. Having all of Class C with us would be a huge help, but I guess you want me and Aozaki to do all the work.
The growl in his voice contrasted greatly with the boy's well-constructed looks. Both Team Canned and Team Fruit's words were doused like a fire being smothered. This was partly due to their fear of the boy, but mostly due to their fear of the special winter cleaning team. Yes, the special winter cleaning team. Joining meant spending part of your winter break cleaning up the old school building and the mountainous rear courtyard that had been neglected by the previous 2 student councils. It was a form of legalized torture that could potentially ruin 3 whole days of your winter break. And forget about any compensation in the form of extra credits. No, it was pointless volunteer work for a student council project. It was practically a miracle that they had found even a single volunteer.
I'm sorry, but we're clearly not fit enough. Yeah, that's it. That stuff takes conditioning. We'll just eat our canned food in the corner now, okay?
Yeah, us too. We're, anemic, you see. And if we don't eat this fruit, we'll, die. That and we already have plans or something. All the students but one scuffled away.
That's much better. Lunchtime is best in silence. I'm tired of people complaining that you guys make even more noise than the freshmen. Get together, you losers.
The mob meekly scurried away. Sojiro turned to join them, but as he did...
Hold on, Sojiro. You're with me.
The hand on his shoulder held him in place.
Jeez, why does the student council... Who's the student council think they are anyway? Barging into our classroom to lecture us on table manners.
Kinomi cursed him under his breath to his friends the second the vice president turned to go.
What was that, Kinomi? Oh, you want to become our second volunteer? Perfect. I'll make it the best winter vacation you've ever had.
The vice president must have heard everything Kinomi said, because he gave a thumbs before figuratively jabbing it in his eye. A thumbs up.
Yo, is this guy for real? This is voluntary, isn't it? It ain't voluntary if you gotta force people to do it, am I right?
Problem child of Class C laughed merrily.
That was yesterday. The school has since accepted the president's proposal that council members be able to forcibly enlist students for participation. And recommendations by the president and vice president are ironclad. Refusing them means breaking school rules in addition to Aozaki's wrath, which, let me tell you now, I won't be able to stop. What? You're hanging me by the balls here. This is extortion or blackmail or something.
Hinomi's terrified shrieking continued behind them as the vice president and Sojiro left the classroom. He didn't even have time to eat any lunch.
What am I going to do with you, Sojiro? With me? Aren't you busy with other things, Vice President?
The two entered the empty student council room.
Which is very detailed. I mean, again, it's probably a photo, but even so, like, the amount of detail on painting it over is astonishing.
Misaki High Student Council had the use of 2 rooms. One was a large office specifically made for the student council. The second was an archive room, once used as a preparatory office for math courses. As the latter of the two, the walls were lined with densely packed shelves, making an already cramped room seem even more confined. For this reason, it served more as a private refuge to the student council. The 2 students sat across from one another. Tobimaru Tsukiji. He was the son of the chairman of Misaki High School and the vice president of its school council. Like Sojiro, he was in his second year, and he first met the transfer student a week earlier with the task, and when the task of looking after him was dumped onto the student council.
I told you, stop calling me that. People may as well call me the president's dog, the shit I have to take from her.
As self-deprecating as his words were, he hardly seemed dissatisfied with the arrangement. He took a snack from his pocket and grimaced at it before taking a bite. The 100-calorie energy bar sacrificed flavor for efficiency, but somehow not enough to prevent him gnawing on it like a piece of jerky. I wonder what those energy bars tasted like back then, since the current ones I think taste good.
Yeah, they definitely improved over time. I see what you're saying, Tobimaru, but being a dog isn't exactly a good thing.
Sojiro sat in the chair with a concerned look on his face.
Huh? I didn't catch that. Something about dogs? Dogs aren't good. I mean, it's a bad comparison in the first place, but dogs are way scarier. Huh? You grew up in the mountains and you're still afraid of dogs? I'm afraid of most animals, but dogs are in a class of their own. A pack of wild dogs is particularly terrifying. They're as tenacious as they are fast. No matter where you run, they'll chase you as long as there's still life left in them.
Sojiro opened his lunch as he spoke. Inside the bright green cloth, 3 beautifully made triangular rice balls.
Would you look at that? Look at what? What do you mean? Oh, nothing. It's just that those are some special looking rice balls you got there. Is that a good or bad thing? I'm trying to compliment you, you idiot.
Sojiro was always confounded by phrasing that could be interpreted in multiple ways. Euphemisms and subtle sarcasm were often lost on him. It was only on rare occasions like this one that he chose to confirm what was being said. Tobimaru had come to suspect that Sojiro had a very black and white way of seeing things.
Say, does that hard chunk of flour looking thing taste any good?
Sojiro stared at the energy bar with a curious look on his face.
It's not meant to taste good. You could try it if you want. People shouldn't hold back when it comes to the 3 base desires.
Tobimaru quickly finished off his bar, put another one on the table, and grabbed one of Sojiro's rice balls. Sojiro failed to notice the rudeness of the forced exchange and gave the preferred energy bar a try.
It kind of tastes like dirt.
Oh, so that's what it tastes like. Ew.
Now you get it. It's what a joyless existence tastes like.
Out of principle, Sojiro labored over his energy bar, cringing all the while. He was both curious of the unknown and loath to leave something unfinished.
Don't force yourself to finish it right now. The whole point of it is that you can eat it on the run. And while the flavor isn't that great, at least it's consistent. Anyway, never mind that. Are you getting used to how things work around here? Yes, you and Aozaki have been a huge help.
Tobimaru turned his eyes to the ceiling, up to the ceiling, unable to handle Sojiro's carefree smile. And absent-minded as Sojiro might have been, his expressions were nonetheless incredibly earnest. He was like poison to someone as self-absorbed as Tobimaru.
Now I know why Aozaki goes so out of her way to avoid him.
He took a bite from the rice ball to steer himself away from such thoughts. Though now cold, the rice that had managed to maintain its freshness, startling Tobimaru.
Huh, wait a sec. I'm the one that has your back, you know that, right? Aozaki told me you were too annoying to deal with. Did I say something to upset you? Don't you get it? I'm the only one helping you keep your head above the water, while Aozaki sits in the student council room, digging up dirt on other students. I'm the one who gets lumbered with the crap jobs, while she gets to...
Tobimaru stopped himself, realizing how ridiculous he sounded. Sojiro, rightly so, knew it was nothing to get this upset over.
Well, whatever. I'm only here because she told me to be. Do you know? Do you know why she lumbered me with you? Because you're the vice president?
Tobimaru's handsome face went dark.
Do you really think it's normal for a student council vice president to waste all of his time on a single transfer student? Ugh, whatever, man. Try asking her directly if you get the chance. You'll learn who she really is.
He snatched another bite of the rice ball while grumbling under his breath. There it was again, rice grains that were just dry enough to be fresh and tender in the mouth, a morsel that betrayed its humble description, which must have been delicately molded by a master chef rather than haphazardly clumped into a ball.
Just the right amount of salt and the subtlest of soy sauce notes coming from the center. It doesn't just whet your appetite, it stimulates the desire centers of your brain and... oh wow. Tobimaru, you appear to be thinking out loud. It's nothing, just color me surprised. Hey, Sonoji, what's this filling anyway?
It was only natural to inquire about the unexpectedly delicious bite. He had been nibbling around the edges and had not yet reached its center.
Oh, right. That would be grasshopper.
I love it.
No way.
The vice president choked on his cough. He had assumed that Sojiro would prefer earthy ingredients instead of seafood on account of his mountain life, but he never expected that he would use grasshoppers.
Damn it, you should have warned me first, Sojiro, but man, was that delicious. Oh, I was just joking.
They locked eyes for a moment.
It's salmon. I would never eat grasshopper. Oh, right. Yeah, I knew that. Of course it wouldn't be grasshopper. Yeah, I mean, you can't find fresh grasshopper in the city to begin with.
Curious as those words were, Tobimaru decided to let them go.
Jeez, Sojiro. That's not something to joke about. You want me to hurl or something? Don't say bad things about Aozaki, then.
Sojiro closed his eyes as he continued to chew on his rice ball. Tobimaru watched incredulously as Sojiro made no attempt to hide his disapproval.
Okay, I can't let that go. You're really saying you were taking revenge for Aozaki?
Sojiro continued chewing. The country boy's silent protest said all that needed to be said. The vice president suddenly looked like he had been struck by lightning.
What the... Don't tell me you've fallen for Aozaki. You have, haven't you? Hey, I asked you a question, damn it.
Tobimaru flew out of his chair and violently shook Sojiro by the shoulders. Sojiro opened his eyes.
I forgot. You don't know about what happened a year ago. Because if you did, you wouldn't be treading down this path of destruction, my friend. You've got it all wrong, but okay. Tell me, what happened a year ago first? Humph.
Tobimaru regained his composure and sat down after a moment's thought.
Okay, I'm not one to gossip, but for you, I'm making an exception.
Tobimaru reassured himself that it was in Sojiro's best interest as a young man to know.
It went down when Ozaki was a freshman. Everybody was new to high school, so nobody knew what anyone was like yet, her included. She was a total babe. I mean, just look at her. All the guys were crazy for her. Little did they know that soon after, they would go crazy for an entirely different reason. The first couple of months, the school descended into chaos. You gotta remember that early on in the year, no one cared about class hierarchy. So tons of guys were fighting themselves over her. It was insane. Just getting anywhere near Aozaki was next to impossible. I don't understand. Why would that happen? Because that's what happens when 100 guys like the same girl, duh. Would have taken Aozaki 3 months just to have lunch with them all individually. So people decided to fight over who got to ask her out. They were all a bunch of losers if you ask me, but what happened next is the juicy part. Those who emerged from the conflict unscathed made their move. And though she might not seem like it, she's the type who likes to put a guy down lightly. You know, because of their sincerity or courage or whatever. At any rate, she rejected all comers as politely as she could. There was one guy who couldn't take a hint. He was a third year who just refused to give up. Maybe he was a little bit nuts. It's hard to see it any other way at this point.
Incidentally, Tobimaru decided to gloss over the fact that this student was also the former student council president.
But he didn't keep it up. He didn't keep it up only at school. Later, he started following her home. That must have been the last straw, because Aozaki wigged out. She sent him packing in ways I'm not comfortable repeating out loud.
I don't blame her, that's creepy as heck.
The conclusion? The students didn't just request a transfer. He tucked tail and left Misaki completely. Aozaki was sentenced to a month of house arrest. It came to be known as the Bloody Town Hall incident. She could tell you more about it than I can, but I wouldn't recommend asking her. Ask the school newspaper editor instead. She loves a bit of gossip. Tobimaru, I get the feeling you're not telling me everything. Hey, you'd do the same if you were me. I may be the board chairman's son and all, but some things scare even me, and I want to graduate in one piece. You want me to freak out every time I see a girl in a school uniform?
Sojiro tilted his head to the side in confusion. Tobimaru had lost him with that comment.
Well, whatever. Well, whatever. What is it about Aozaki that you like anyway?
He tilted his head again, this time to the other side.
Whoa, are you really that hot for her? Because if your heart pounds in her presence, that could be caused by fear, you know? Tell me you aren't stupid enough to like her for no good reason.
He tilted his head again even further. What Tobimaru was saying sounded off, but Sojiro decided not to press the matter. All the more because he found many of his own emotions towards Aoko Aozaki to be incomprehensible.
It is kind of strange, to be honest. I don't even know her that well.
That was because they had not truly spoken to each other since the day she showed him around. Every time Sojiro tried to talk to her, she immediately got up and left. As fate would have it, they ended up working together that recent Sunday, but made only idle chatter on the way and back.
There's something you don't know either, Tobimaru. Sometimes I feel like someone's gaze on me, and when I turn around to see who it is, she's there, looking like she's worried about me, that I'll mess up. I know what you'll say. She just happened to see me in the hallway and was keeping an eye on me. Maybe she secretly wishes she could ignore me when we pass each other. But whatever the reason, I believe her concern is genuine. And the most important thing about all of this, I believe the nature of hers has helped me out repeatedly.
His tone was measured and sincere. Tobimaru sighed with a tinge of regret. If not for those words, he could have introduced Sojiro to a more suitable girl with whom he could have lived out the rest of his school days in peace. He never went to such lengths for his other friends. Generally speaking, if it was of some benefit to him, he was unafraid of exploiting another. If they were of no use, he didn't bother getting involved with them, That was how Tobimaru Tsukiji operated. Sojiro happened to be the type of person who provided no benefit to Tobimaru, yet somehow sparked in him a desire to help. It was not that friendship was completely alien to him. He just did not have many people he felt that close to. So if Sojiro had really fallen for Aoko, it was not his place as a friend to try and change his mind.
Well, I guess it's true that love knows no reason. I wouldn't say there's no reason for it. I can think of one at least. I thought she was beautiful the moment I first laid eyes on her.
Tobimaru's shoulders slumped.
After all of that, you just like her for her looks? Listen to yourself, Sojiro. What's wrong with appreciating beauty? I don't think there's anything wrong with judging someone by the physical appearance they worked hard to create.
That sounded like sophism to Tobimaru, but he had no counterpoint to offer.
Alright, I get it. I'll let it go. It's none of my business who you go after anyway.
Now, about one major thing that Tobimaru had been mistaken about this whole conversation. Namely, that Sojiro was not head over heels in love with Aoko, and hoped to go steady with her. He merely liked her as a person. Nobody could have foreseen the massive calamity that would be caused by this simple misunderstanding.
I just one piece of advice for you, Sojiro. Just because Aozaki fights with someone doesn't mean she hates them. And just because she's nice to someone doesn't mean she likes them. I'm a prime example of that.
He spoke with a pained sigh as if opening old wounds in the past.
I see. What happened? Long story short, she used to be really full of herself, and I once tried to hit on her. It happened last summer. I'd already been working with her in the student council for a year at that point, and saw her more like a fellow soldier than in the trenches than as a girl. One day, I lost my temper and took a swing at her. I like to think I've got a mean right hook, and I slugged her pretty good, so I thought I won that round.
He had a distant look in his eyes as his words trailed off.
The next day, when I came to the student council room, I thought she'd be spoiling for a fight, but she was the same as always. And since then, we've simply continued to work together as president and vice president.
Sojiro sighed at his story. He then said with absolute confidence,
So, you just wanted to brag about how close you two are?
Clearly, he had missed the point entirely.
Are you kidding me? How in the hell did you come to that conclusion after hearing a story like that? I'm telling you that from that day forward, I could never see her again as a woman. Oh, I was mistaken?
A look of disappointment flittered across Sojiro's face. Tobimaru revised his opinion of him. Sojiro was something of a simpleton, but there was something more about him that Tobimaru could not quite place.
Just take it from me. Her standards are anything but normal. She won't like you for being nice to her, and she won't hate you for being mean to her. That's the kind of princess she is.
Sojiro answered that he would keep it in mind as he looked to the clock. They'd been talking for a while, and lunch was almost over.
Is there anything else you wanted to discuss? Huh? I didn't have anything to discuss in the first place.
Why had Tobimaru even brought him here? In the first place, Sojiro tilted his head in wonder, but shook it off to deal with the more pressing matters at hand.
Could you stay a little longer? There's something I wanted to ask you. Yes?
Tobimaru sat up straight, having never seen Sojiro's face look so serious before. Sojiro set aside his rice ball and cleared his throat.
It's about something that happened yesterday.
He spoke solemnly. and as carefully as possible, he recounted what had occurred the night before. Mystery. Shizuki, you in here? It was 10 to 12, and lunchtime was quickly coming to an end.
Oh, hello, Ocelot Unit. How you doing? And you might be right about that, about the first rule of magecraft.
Her face popped into Class C as lively as ever. As if it were an everyday occurrence, Aoko Aozaki announced her presence.
Guess I'll take over for the narration now. While Aoko wasn't part of Class C, she didn't let it bother her as she casually entered the classroom. In contrast, the baby birds who had been so noisily chirping while eating lunch quickly quieted down and began to rearrange their seats.
Humph, are they trying to tell me something?
She bristled internally before looking around the room. She could not see the male student she had come here to find. He hardly stood out, so she thought he might be hidden in a corner somewhere, but that appeared to not be the case.
Arisato, do you have any idea where Shizuki from seat 12 is?
Aoko kept her tone professional. Wait, me? Shizuki left with His Highness Tobimaru a while ago. The boy was shocked that she actually knew his name. One might think that the reason students referred to Tobimaru Tsukihime by a royal title was because he was the chairman's son, but it was because he actually acted like royalty. In fact, the vice president was said to have taken a liking to the title.
He's with Tobimaru? Are those two friends or something?
She seemed surprised. The class seemed surprised at her surprise. No idea, but we've never seen Tsukiji be that friendly with another boy before. Well, maybe Kinomi, but he's an idiot, so that hardly counts.
Yeah, His Highness was slow to warm to him, but since the third day, it's been nothing but friendly arguments.
Well, he can't really help but like Shizuki. He may be a little odd, but he's good people.
Totally, Sojiro is really nice.
Having recomposed themselves, Class C started chatting again. Aoko listened for a bit before turning around and leaving the class with a later. Okay, back to Sojiro.
Sojiro's talk finished as quickly as it had started. Lunchtime was coming to a close in the student council room. Sojiro, having told his story, was smiling in satisfaction. Tobimaru, still sitting across from him, was frowning.
So, what do you think?
Sojiro has told his yarn as best as he could. Tobimaru fingered his brow as if he was angry or concerned.
Sonoji, are you trying to make fun of me? Word of advice, leave that to us smart people, Take that back. I'm more clever than you think.
His response only confirmed Tobimaru's suspicions. It had to be one of two possible conclusions. That what Sojiro had just told him was true. Or that Sojiro was so tired that he must have been hallucinating at the time. Tobimaru sincerely hoped that it was the latter.
To be honest, Sojiro, you're growing on me. Anybody that never lies can't really be considered human. So for a misanthrope like me, I suppose you could say it's easy to like you. But if you're going to stick to your dumb story, I'm not sure what I'm going to do for lunch tomorrow. Starting tomorrow. Why not just eat in the cafeteria?
Hearing his suggestion, Tobimaru's face darkened.
Okay, I'll spell it out for you. You were hallucinating. If you still insist you saw a ghost, I'd be more than happy to introduce you to a good psychiatrist. So that's your take on it. Good to know.
As bitter as Tobimaru's words might have sounded to most, Sojiro swallowed them whole.
I already figured as much. It sounded like a tall tale to me, too. I was starting to wonder if it was normal for that kind of thing to go on in the city, so I wanted to hear your opinion.
Satisfied, Sojiro finished off his last rice ball and neatly folded the cloth.
Hey, hold on a second. You didn't actually think it was normal for people in the city to breathe fire or extend their arms like they're made of rubber, did you? Well, not normal as much as within the realm of possibility. The city is full of extraordinary things we don't have up in the mountains. I thought it might have some extraordinary people as well.
Face was as serious as it was made Tobimaru realize just how big a culture shock Sojiro must have been experiencing. Living up in the mountains with no electricity. In a place where the night sky was as it always had been, where humans were just one more organism in nature's garden. It makes sense that those conditions would create a boy like him. The idea of children growing up so pure was an appealing one, but maybe it was natural to forgo civilization when your population was so small. Or perhaps it was so simple, a world that excessive knowledge. Yeah, a world that excessive knowledge was deemed irrelevant.
It was so simple a world. Yeah.
It was precisely because city life offered him so much that was impossible up till now that he had come to the conclusion that anything was possible here.
Relax. The city might have its share of shady guys, but none of them are magicians in disguise. I hope you're right.
But Sojiro seemed unsure. And on Tobimaru's part, there were things to Sojiro's story that he found hard to swallow. Whether true or not, the incident Sojiro had described was disturbing.
For the time being, let's assume what you actually saw, what you say actually happened. That would ultimately mean that one of our school students killed someone in the park last night, and that neither of the parties involved were normal. As a newcomer to town, Sojiro... Oh wait, no, it's narration.
As a newcomer to town, Sojiro assumed that everyone his age was a student at this school. For better or worse, he was right.
One of them was equipped with a flamethrower, while the other had a naginata, or at least a bladed weapon resembling one, that was a good few feet in length.
Sojiro bobbed his head up and down as he listened to the disbelief in Tobimaru's voice. Hearing it repeated by someone else, he could see how someone might think he was taking them for a ride.
Look, I'm not crazy. It really did happen like I said. Give it to me straight, Sojiro. You're pulling my leg, aren't you? No, I'm not. But I get it. There's no one in the city who could do that, right? I mean, One Piece hasn't even been written yet. This is the 80s. If not, it was probably just hallucinating, like you said. Working part-time while studying for exams has been pretty trying.
Winter break was just around the corner, and the end of term's exams were but a week away. Both were proving formidable opponents for Sojiro.
You don't even know the basics, so I need to study twice. Oh, no, wait. I don't even know the basics, so I need to study twice as hard as everyone else. I mean, anyone would start to lose it if they did nothing but study, right? I wouldn't say you're losing it, but you're definitely pushing yourself too hard. Maybe cut back on work a little until the exams are over. I've tried to cut back, but a lot of people take off at the end of the year, so they often ask me to fill in for their shifts.
He shrugged helplessly. It was obvious from his words that he had been busy.
At FedEx, we're pretty much not allowed to take off unless we gave like a month's notice during that time of year. Because, it's the holiday rush, so a lot of stuff's coming through.
Even if he was not going crazy, lack of sleep could have caused him to daydream, even if this all did go down in the middle of the night.
Sounds tough, Sojiro. Yeah, city life has been exhausting.
Sojiro nodded with a pained look on his face. What was strange, however, was that he did not look the least bit tired.
I'm impressed you never complain about it. You always look like nothing bothers you at all. That's just because it isn't bad enough to bother me.
As he answered, Sojiro looked up at the clock on the wall. Lunchtime was almost over.
Tobimaro at the time. Really? It's that late already? You can go on ahead. I still have things to do.
Sojiro watched as Tobimaru made a gesture that seemed to lament the life of a student council member. His eyes looked as if they were looking at a piece of art and not understanding its value.
I'm jealous that you can just skip class whenever you want. I would have thought you were a stickler for the rules. How many times do I have to tell you? I'm not skipping when I've got special permission. It's not skipping.
The vice president angrily defended himself as he stood up. The transfer student merely gazed at him, unfazed.
Hey, you're not honestly implying you still don't understand after all that, are you? Oh well, just sit down and listen, Sonoji. I was granted talent and luck beyond that of most people, but I've always put the work in. But once I leave here, I'm on my own. Now do you get it? I'm sick of explaining this to people. My family's status will only keep me afloat for one more year. What about that could you possibly envy? Most people can live off privilege for their entire lives, but the best I get is 3 measly years. So I have to take advantage of what I have while I have it. Just the thought of having to count beans like the rest of the idiots out there gets me livid. The adult world is going to kill me. The envy alone will be enough to destroy my fragile heart.
While he must have been joking, Sojiro took his tone to be completely sincere. He listened as he envies Tobimaru's ability to be so open about his feelings. From his frame of reference, there was nothing he could do but take Tobimaru for his word.
If you're looking to... Wait, I think that's Aoko.
If you're looking to extend your privileges, why not stay in school? I'd be more than happy to arrange that for you.
The door to the student council room flew open. Oh, wait.
The door to the student council room flew open, washing away Sojiro's half-hearted responses to his friend. This frosty statement destroyed the warm atmosphere of the room. And it also marked the abrupt end to Tobimaru Tsukiji's reign there.
No, I just meant that our dreams are something we take hold of ourselves.
Really? Then why not spend more time on that than this pathetic display? I could hear you all the way from the hallway, Mr. Vice President.
Not
Not missing a beat, or...
Yeah, I'll take over. Not missing a beat, Aoko Aozaki stepped inside the room. Her dark hair was slightly disheveled as if she had been running. Her gaze missed the sitting Sojiro entirely and was focused completely on the ranting vice president. Good luck, Tobimaru. Sojiro quietly got up to head back to his classroom. That's cold, man. Tobimaru grumbled in front of Aoko. But it's almost time for class. You're just proving my point. He cut himself off. Aoko briefly shifted her gaze to Sojiro.
It's not like I have time for this, either, you know. It feels like I'm always having to clean up after you.
Not a complaint. It was her honest opinion. Wait, you're here for Sojiro?
Don't worry, I'll deal with you next.
Her eyes shimmered with murderous glee. It was slightly different from her more sullen gaze to which Tobimaru had grown accustomed. For whatever reason, Aoko's mood seemed worse than usual.
Shizuki, would she prefer running or swimming?
Aoko asked abruptly. Sojiro frowned a little bit before saying he was fine with either one.
That won't do. Pick one.
Swimming, I guess. Why do you ask?
Because you still haven't joined a club.
A succinct reply, one that left no room for Sojiro to object.
You've read the school regulations. All students must participate in club activities. I'm not the biggest fan of it myself, to be honest. But a rule is a rule.
That's crazy. How could I possibly find the time for that?
How indeed.
An equally terse response. She was typically to the point, but Tobimaro got the impression that she was expressly trying to keep her interaction with Sojiro short. They stared at each other in silence. Tobimaro stood breathlessly silent on the sidelines until Sojiro broke the impasse. I thought you of all people would understand, Aozaki. I mean, of course you do. That's what makes you strong. Sojiro stood up from his seat. He walked past Aoko and into the hallway. Do you mind if I start tomorrow?
Whatever works for you, Shizuki.
He did his best to force a smile before leaving the student council room. While watching the events play out, Tobimaro found himself deeply impressed with Sojiro. You could tell from Aoko's behavior that she was trying to get a rise out of Sojiro. Sojiro, on the other hand, was none the wiser to what Aoko was doing, so he simply went about it his way. To Tobimaro, it was hard to believe that Sojiro had not taken offense. All he observed was the performance of a lifetime in Sojiro as he maintained a poker face. The kid is some balls, huh, President? He looked at Aoko curiously. Aoko stood completely still, staring at the wall. Hey, Aozaki? Aoko showed no response. Yo, President. Urta Aozaki. Come in. Lady Aoko. Ahem. I'm talking to you, Aoko Aozaki.
The ow 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 already. God.
Her fury echoed across the student council room. It was a beautiful sound that could be heard into the hallway and made Tobimaro's rant from earlier pale in comparison. Look who's talking, this megaphone. Perhaps her shouting was still ringing in his ears, or he was just the type to answer a shout with a shout, but he shot back reflexively. No wonder you can't get a boyfriend. Do I have your attention now?
I could hear you before. I was just ignoring you because you were annoying me. And I thought it'd be easier than getting you to shut up.
You've got some nerve. Am I a mosquito to you?
A mosquito would offer better company, so no.
What exactly is that supposed to mean?
We've never seen eye to eye. Talking to you is like going on a date, both pointless activities.
Based on that statement, Aoko must have been under the assumption that dating is the act of two lovers whispering nonsense to each other. The real question is what the hell qualifies this company to you, but whatever. You could, ease off a little from time to time.
Always trying to smooth things over with that silver tongue of yours.
At least I'm trying. It's like you stopped bothering to be civil 2 years ago.
I'm always civil, just not when you're in the same room.
So that's how it is. You're still upset with me for what happened, aren't you? There's only one thing that Tobimaro could be talking about. The incident that occurred in the student council room this past summer.
Huh? Isn't that ancient history at this point? Don't you think you should stop wasting brain power on this? I mean, you've got a few brain cells to work with as it is.
As the conversation wore on, Aoko's murderous aura began to fade, and her sharp gaze gave way to a calmer demeanor rarely seen from her. It's quite possible that nobody besides Tobimaro had ever seen the side of her at school before. Thanks for the concern, Psych. And for the record, it's not like I want to relive it either. It's just, when Sonoji was being an idiot earlier, it kind of reminded me of how it went down. Come to think of it, this is the room it happened in. Despite his ranting, his face betrayed a touch of nostalgia. Aoko, on the other hand, was scowling.
Hold on. You didn't tell him about what happened, did you?
Sure did. At least, how you mocked my candidacy for president and told me my face had sidekick written all over it. And the part where I took the bait and tried my damnedest to punch you for it. Aoko let out a sigh, as if relieved that Tobimaro had not told Sojiro the rest of the story. Even she wasn't sure why.
Admit that it was quite a punch, though. It was enough to make me react on reflex. Did I really say that, by the way?
You sure did. And not only that, after I was taken to the infirmary, you had the balls to tell me you did me a favor by forcing me to be your number 2. Since that day, Tobimaro had served as the vice president to the person who had served the role from him. It's fine, though. The president's chair doesn't suit me anyway. I feel much more at home as the vice president. Your job would have properly turned me into my dad.
Your pride never allowed you to give anything less than your best. You might be a little too comfortable on the student council, though. Makes me wonder how you would have looked as an honor student.
Don't even go there. Even thinking about it gives me the creeps. Having one wolf in sheep's clothing around here is bad enough. Tobimaro shooed Aoko away like an annoying pest. It was a typical example of the crude verbal abuse they exchanged on a daily basis, with a wittiness that only longtime foes could manage.
So, why did you tell him?
Tell who what?
Why did you tell him what happened between you and me?
Oh, that. I was just trying to put a stop to the nonsense he was spewing, and... Excuse me. He stopped himself before he said any more. He knew better than to let slip the fact that Sojiro had a thing for Aoko. Everyone knew guys didn't sell each other out like that, even if it was all in truth a misunderstanding. Anyway, what the hell was that before, Aozaki? That's some grudge you got against Sojiro.
I'm not some princess who goes around holding grudges for something that happened over a week ago, you know.
He wanted to retort that she was more like a queen than a princess. But he'd come to know her too well over the past 2 years to dig himself into a hole like that. Okay, so why'd you pick a fight with him? I mean, he does throw you off when you talk to him, but there's not an evil bone in his body. Wow, why are you looking at me like you just stepped in a turd?
Oh, no big reason. Hearing you say that, I was just thinking that I've never met such a despicable person in my life.
Well, whatever. So, he's a good guy? It makes him the perfect person to pick a fight with. If nobody else will do it, the job falls to me, right? Oh, whoops. God damn it. That was her line. She said casually, having regained her composure. You just can't help yourself, huh? Tobimaro could not follow her reasoning at all. Tobimaro was used to Aoko's erratic trains of thought, but hating Sojiro for no reason seemed needlessly cruel. His friend's naive and innocent face came to mind, and then he blurted. But Sojiro's taken a shine to you, Aozaki. How can you hate him knowing that? His vow of silence had lasted not even 2 minutes. Oh, what I meant was he tried to take it back, but it was too late. She had heard the words loud and clear. All I could hope for now was that she would take it well.
Because I like what I like and dislike what I don't like. Just because he wants to be friends doesn't mean I have to suddenly like him.
Stone cold Aoko. Tobimaro found himself filled with indignation at how detached Aoko was being. Don't you get it? This isn't just about friendship. And I don't mean he only likes you either. Believe me when I say that Sonoji really has a thing for you. He shouted, his face the embodiment of sincerity. Aoko gave him a blank stare. It was the face of someone who had lost their wallet hours earlier and was only just realizing it now. The first instant of doubt that ushers in the reality of the situation. But an instant is all it was.
So what?
She answered coolly, as if she had no idea why it should matter to her at all. So what? Were you born in hell? I assume you didn't hear me, and I'll say it again. Sojiro. Tobimaro gave up any pretense of masculine solidarity and fired back hard.
Don't bother, I couldn't care less.
She ruthlessly cut him off. Thinking of the boy who still harbored unrequited love for Aoko, Tobimaro tried hard to come up with a name befitting of the demoness in front of him.
Now I see. So that's why you told him about our little incident. Who could have thought His Highness could be so considerate to his friends? I bet you also told him all the nasty rumors floating about me too, huh?
She laughed as a fiendish smile adorned her face. Tobimaro repented to God, whoever and wherever he or she might be, for even bringing up Aoko's love life.
You did the right thing, Tobimaru. Now be a good little vice president and tell me every single thing you told him.
She was smiling, but Tobimaro wished she'd at least try to hide the bloodlust. Just two things, really. The story you're most infamous for, and what happened in this room. Aoko nodded with satisfaction as she listened to Tobimaro's hesitant answer.
Rumors like those can come in handy sometimes. You can use them chase off annoying people. Just be careful about who you tell, okay?
Had this been in writing, the chillingly sweet tone of her words could have been signed with a heart. Whether angry or happy, Aozaki spoke in his disturbingly cute manner when she was in a heightened emotional state. Tobimaro took note of this new discovery, aware that it did nothing to get him out of the situation. Don't worry, I value my life, so I'll shut my mouth. But Aozaki, do you really hate Sojiro that much? He knew it was a topic he would be better off avoiding, but he tried asking anyway. Bonds between men, at times, shine more beautifully than a pearl.
Well, I might not like him, but that doesn't mean I hate him. I'm not even sure why I feel the way I do. Which is probably the problem.
Perhaps to placate Tobimaro, Aoko paused in contemplation before she answered. Giving it a moment without immediately blurting out a response meant that not even he could complain. I guess that makes sense. As much as emotional arguments can't make sense, there's nothing I can do if neither of you understand why you feel the way you do. Thinking that would be the end of it, Tobimaro looked up towards the ceiling and silently apologized to Sojiro. However, his final sentence appeared to have piqued Aoko's interest.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Her faux cheer had vanished. Failing to pick up on this, Tobimaro answered nonchalantly. Oh, nothing. It's just that Sojiro also said he wasn't exactly sure why he liked you. Or more like, there was no particular reason for how he felt, I think. Tobimaro was still in disbelief that Sojiro had been charmed by Ako's appearance, so he purposely left that part out.
He said he likes me. For no reason?
Yeah, I mean, I even told him about all the rumors around you, and it had no effect on him whatsoever. What did he say again? Oh, right. He was going on about how genuine your concern for him was, and how it really helped him. It's almost too mushy for me to repeat out loud. All I can say is that, unlike other boys, the rumors didn't faze him in the least. Tobimaro finally noticed a shift in Aoko's demeanor. She was scowling at the wall. She glared at it in silence like it was her worst enemy. This continued for several minutes.
That poor wall. What the hell is that? Why can't I shake the feeling that I've heard all this before somewhere?
So great was her ire that gnashing of her teeth was audible. Irritation seemed like it reached the point that Aoko forgot Tobimaro was even in the room. Tobimaro looked heavenward for forgiveness, sensing that he'd brought further calamity down upon Sojiro's head. I kind of get it now. I think I know why I don't like it. Oh, wait. Tobimaro looked away as if to indicate that he'd rather not know, but Aoko ignored him and began to grumble venomously.
The way he acts and talks reminds me of someone I despise. Like how everyone thinks he's an angel, and how nothing seems to bother him. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's how good he is at getting on my nerves.
Glancing idly up at the clock, Tobimaro thought that last part just sounded like a misplaced anger. And that was that. 1 o'clock had come and gone. Fine, I get it. Sorry I said anything. So did you need me for anything? Class has already started, you know.
Huh? What do you mean by class? When did it?
The bell rang right after Sonoji left, around the time you were busy being pissed off at the wall. Tell me, Miss President, are you allowed to miss 5th period?
Of course I'm not. Why didn't you say something?
She looked like she was on the verge of tears as she shouted and pulled at his necktie. Tobimaro raised his hands to mock surrender, a gesture reserved only for the true victor. Consider this revenge for saying I was worse than a mosquito. Hopefully you learned your lesson, O hellish demon who feasts upon the hearts of men.
You're so petty, you know that. You're supposed to repay insult with insult, you coward.
She tightened his necktie around his neck with a yank. The Vice President smiled with a thuggish grin, as if her reaction made his victory that much sweeter. It's no secret that you're heading to remedial classics. I don't have to tell you who teaches Class A during 5th period. Old Bat Fujishiro is going to have your head. Fujishiro has one of the longest tenures at the school, so it's only natural she would be in charge of teaching the classics. This is where you stop yanking on my tie and haul ass to your classroom. I won't even try to stop you. Am I not merciful?
Damn it all. I can't believe you all people pulled one over on me. Just die already.
She choked him even harder with his necktie. As Aoko put words into action and mercilessly strangled Tobimaro, he saw his life flash before his eyes. Wait, stop. I'm gonna die. It isn't too late. Do you want them to mark you absent? Aoko glanced up at the clock. Still only 1:07. Her route from the student council room on the 2nd floor of Class A, classroom on the 3rd floor. If she ran, she could make it.
Tobimaru, this time.
Aoko clicked her tongue disappointedly. What disturbed Tobimaru was that it didn't sound like an empty threat.
Be here after school. I actually do have something I need you to do.
She was halfway out of the room before she even finished her sentence. Finally all alone, Tobimaru closed the open door, locked it, and slumped into a chair. Never a dull moment with Aozaki around, that's for sure. He leaned back on the creaky folding chair and let out a sigh. The weather outside was beautiful, but the sunlight waned earlier in the winter. Before long, daylight would fade, and the unheated student council room would grow colder and colder. All the good equipment, like the heater, had ended up in the main office, so we had no choice but to settle for a chilly afternoon. If only this weather would last. Shame the forecast predicted more clouds. After a somewhat suggestive monologue, Tobimaru's mind drifted. He idly wondered to himself whether Sojiro was an overcast day or a clear day sort of guy, but no answer came.
The school day over, Sojiro headed straight to his job. While the school had approved his jobs at the Chinese restaurant and fish market in Misaki shopping district, there was other work he hadn't mentioned to them. And it was not because he knew that they would complain at him working too many, but rather because of the illicit nature of one job in particular. Today, his workplace was at a pachinko parlor in front of Yashirogi Station. Sojiro changed out of his school uniform and into a black faux tuxedo uniform and began cleaning the storefront. Yashirogi was the jewel of Misaki City, a busy place with a vast assortment of commercial centers and shopping arcades. Where there were people en masse, there were products made en masse. A romantic might describe it as a place of joy. A realist would note the free enterprise. A cynic would point at all the garbage. Local authorities had attempted to beautify Yashirogi, but there was one basic tenet of society they could not overcome. The establishment was the embodiment of that rule. Businesses such as this attracted the dregs of society, and as such, the front of the parlor had to be cleaned several times a day. Sojiro stood outside in the winter cold, sweeping used-up cigarette butts, picking up discarded flyers and tossing empty cans into the trash. Something about it must have reminded him of mountain life because he cheerfully finished the job with ease. After making sure the storefront was acceptably clean, he returned to the inside of the parlor, where it was nice and warm. Blinding lights, deafening sounds, and the oppressive odor of tobacco assaulted him as he passed through the parlor on his way to the office.
Boss, I finished cleaning outside. Good job. I've got something else for you. Could you go check on the customer on machine 40 on the second floor for me? I have a hunch you might be cheating.
His boss was a good-natured man who used to work a desk job. The reason he employed someone like Sojiro, even though he was clearly a student, was not because he admired him for working his way through school. It was because all the other employees were scary and intimidating, and he wanted at least one employee who was not.
Are you sure? I still haven't cleaned the toilets. It's fine, it's fine. She's in the security camera's blind spot, so we have no way of confirming whether she's up to no good. Why would you put a machine there?
I know, right?
I want you to go because you've got a sixth sense about these things. Go check on her, will you?
Hearing that, Sojiro put away his cleaning equipment and headed upstairs. It was a typically large-scale pachinko parlor with 2 floors. It prided itself on being a local establishment that was satisfied with taking the locals' money, little by little without resorting to more exploitative means. But regardless of the parlor's intentions, its customers were not so scrupulous. Among them were the casual players, professional gamblers, and cheaters looking to profit by exploiting whatever loopholes they could find. Of particular prevalence was a device developed in the mid-80s that could disrupt a machine's circuitry from the outside and make it much easier to get what was called a 777 jackpot. As much as the parlor wanted to deny these cheaters an entry, it needed to present hard evidence of cheating or risk losing customers, particularly in the service industry. Innocent until proven guilty was not a rule taken lightly. As a result, they could only punish the customers they caught in the act. Such cheaters were known as gotoshi, a slice of society which Sojiro knew nothing about. What he did know was that they were inconveniencing his employer and violating their rules. He went upstairs. The radio and game machine sounds on the second floor were quieter than the cacophony downstairs. There were 100 game machines on the ground floor and over 80 on the second. While there were some empty seats here and there, it was a solid evening turnout. The machine mentioned by his boss was in the center aisle. Sojiro nonchalantly leaned back against the wall and watched the customer hit the jackpot over and over again. The second he saw her, his gut told him that she was not cheating. He still was not sure what made someone a master swindler, but if it meant that they were special, this woman certainly fit that description. It was almost as if he could feel the luck emanating from her. As the customers looked on, she silently turned the handle again and again. She appeared older than Sojiro. She wore a green, formal-fitting one-piece dress. A pair of stockings covered her legs. Her slender legs were gracefully crossed, and her elegance suited a painting better than a casino. Her dark reddish hair was cut short in a bob, perfectly framing her stylish spectacles and crimson lips. Truth be told, something was off about this picturesque beauty ringing the jackpot over and over again. 4 boxes worth of pachinko balls sat at her feet, and her winning streak showed no sign of abating. She looked bored as her slender porcelain fingers lifted a long cigarette to her lips.
Feels like I've seen her somewhere.
Just as that thought crossed his mind, her gaze turned toward the wall and Sojiro. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. He reflexively covered his mouth to keep from shrieking.
It's her, the woman from yesterday.
Acting on pure instinct, Sojiro took off running. He headed straight downstairs, desperate not to be on the same floor as her. He would have run straight out the door, but for his obligations to his job.
Boss, I'm leaving early, and the person upstairs is fine.
He tried to keep his composure as he spoke, jamming his school uniform into a paper bag as he ran out of the parlor. Cloudy weather brought the shadow of night over Yashirogi as he ran through the shopping arcade toward the station. He shot up the staircase like an arrow, quickly pulled his train pass from his wallet, and passed through the ticket gate. The ticket gate was crowded with people, standing around, walking and talking. The station attendant by the automatic ticket machine had an unpleasant look on his face. There was now a familiar, comforting hustle and bustle around him. Just another day in the city. Nothing like what he witnessed the night before.
Phew.
He could finally breathe again. The momentary rush of relief brought him to an abrupt stop. He nervously turned around. There was no way that dangerous individual could be behind him.
Wait, why would I even...
He couldn't think of a good reason for why he fled so desperately. As far as he could remember, he hadn't even seen the threat's face long enough to form an opinion about her. Sojiro gave himself a good slap on the cheek to pull himself together and quickly made his way down to the platform. Unfortunately, the next train was 10 minutes away, and panicking would do him no favors, so he quietly found an empty seat and sat down. He took another deep breath. He was surrounded by people waiting for the train just like he was, and no sign of anyone pursuing him. He had finally cleared up, and he assured himself that he was overthinking things, though he was surprised at how heavy his shoulders felt.
I'm just tired, I'm sure of it. I know my own body best, after all.
Sojiro sighed at his greater than expected fatigue. He had certainly struggled since coming down from the mountains, but in retrospect, it could have been worse. Physically, he was probably holding up fine. He was much less confident in his mental state. The city and the mountains could not have been more different. He had been slow to recognize the differences and adapt. Acclimation was simple enough. Humans were nothing if not adaptable. Even without any effort, one would learn to adjust over time. Recognizing the challenges had been the hard part.
Actually, it's all been difficult.
Sojiro grumbled a complaint he never uttered before. To be honest, he was still afraid to wander around town. There were so many things city people took for granted that Sojiro had yet to grasp. It was little wonder that this never-ending chain of surprises would wear on him.
Oh, it isn't my body that's tired. That would explain the hallucination.
He muttered to himself, then shook his head. That which exists, exists. Such was the way of all things. Tobimaru had called it a hallucination, but Sojiro knew that what he saw was real. The city was a magical kingdom compared to the mountains. If there were real magicians secretly living here, that should have been no surprise at all. Thought alone made his legs tremble. It took him a moment longer to realize that they were quivering out of fear. He had feared the unnatural ever since he encountered a wild bear on a mountain path as a child.
But this is nothing like that. I cried and screamed my head off back then.
Sojiro smiled a little as he recalled his traumatic childhood memory. Anyone would have fainted at the sudden appearance of a growling beast that towered over 6 feet tall. The monster in the movie that Sojiro saw not 2 days ago was the equivalent of a cuddly stuffed animal when compared to the wild mountain creatures. He was reminded that he'd faced far worse before, and his ordeal now was something he could endure.
That's right, the problem now is... I heard someone say at the end, what's catch and eliminate supposed to mean?
At face value, the meaning was obvious. But the implications were simply too frightening to contemplate seriously. Perhaps he had misheard the words, or perhaps the speaker had misspoke.
The law of the city means someone will deal out punishment eventually.
Even as he said it, the idea didn't quite feel real. It was hard to imagine that applied to him. Sojiro breathed in and closed his eyes. His vision dimmed, putting the illuminated cityscape out of sight and out of mind. For now, he resolved to put last night's events behind him. When he opened his eyes, his breathing had calmed.
I wonder, What happened to Tobimaro when he tried to hit Aozaki?
The question suddenly popped into Sojiro's head. He decided that he would ask next time and stood up from his chair. A long streak of light blazed by, announcing the arrival of the next train.
All right. Okay, let's just make sure there's nothing new in the archive. I know it doesn't happen every chapter, but yeah, nothing here. Okay. Next episode. Chapter 3, Knights Possessive.
Let me tell you how the events of yesterday transpired.
Oops. On moonless nights, you must never look back.
Was it a lesson or was it a warning? It was so very long ago. At the time, I could not have imagined what my very being would become. One night it came without warning. That's interesting how it's I.
Yeah, maybe is this a first person scene? No, okay, Aoko's narrating right now.
I was filled with anxiety so heightened that it made me want to burst into tears, so I fled to my grandfather's workshop. Unlike the grandfather I knew, he smiled and kindly placed his hand upon my head.
Yes, the Red Death follows your every step.
Thanks, Grandpa. Rather than consoling me, he sent me home with only those haunting words. That night, I am certain I sensed a shadow lurking behind me. Something or someone watching me from afar. Then little by little, by year, it drew closer. Eventually, the presence that once felt like a spot on the horizon grew so close that I could feel its breath down the base of my neck. Of course, it was all in my mind. When I turned around, nobody was there. But that night marked the beginning. In hindsight, I later understood that the indescribable anxiety I felt was a dread of certain death.
Oh, there's Aoko's singing.
Dang, I still don't
Alice, rather.
remember how that one went.
You don't wait. You don't know the song? Okay.
That one was never like really popular.
Actually, I guess the only reason I know it is because it was in a point-and-click adventure game I had as a kid, and it would show up a lot. But it's "Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon."
Ooh, the dish and the spoon had an affair, huh? How much time had passed since that night? It lingered deep in the recesses of my mind, where childhood memories are kept. A faded storybook-esque memory. On dark nights, I still hear the faint echo of my grandfather's words. But no matter how strong the wind may howl or how entrancing the song of the girl next to me, I could never bury his ominous words completely. It's here. The girl beside me said. Alice's inflectionless voice spoke volumes of her role as a bystander. That night, there was only me and her. It was the night I would mark as the birth of who I am today. For what should have been quite the memorable night, it sure wasn't a promising start. Dense clouds blocked the starlight above like a black umbrella. Strong wind tore through the sky, carrying the heavy clouds with it. The hands on the clock in the middle of the park pointed skyward, as if reaching for the moon. Unfortunately for them, tonight there was no moon to point at. The winter air grew fiercer as night wore on. Inhaling felt as though it would freeze me from the inside. The air chilled me to the bone, threatening to pass up my spine directly to my brain. To prevent my mind from being paralyzed, and to prevent my fingertips from becoming stone, I sparked a fire using my internal rhythm and emotion. I'm transferring tactile feedback to you. Good luck. Stand over there and the engraved will-o-wisp will ignite.
How come she is just one button undone?
I responded to Alice with a nod. And then, for just a moment, I saw the ground. My legs quivered ever so faintly. I told myself they were shaking from the cold, but I wasn't so sure. In reality, they may not have been numbed by the cold, but by fear. I breathed a sigh of relief. My humanity must still be intact if my emotions are still present. Before I could sink into the pool of my own sentimentality, the sensations from the bounded field flowed from Alice into me. A transparent wall covered the entire park. An unrecognizable carpet rooted deep under the earth. Alice Kuonji's chants of the Mother Goose fairy tales permeated the night. The sensations became one with my body. I felt goosebumps on my quivering right arm. Someone had trespassed. The goosebumps crept up my right arm like ants, and slowly but surely made inroads to my heart. Holding back the desire to drive them out, I waited for them to reach a certain definitive position. A moonless night. The park's quaint streetlights were not enough to lift the darkness. The ants came to a stop. Far, far from my right arm, they had reached my very heart. Even without the aid of my sense of sight, I could see the intruder lurking in the darkness. To starboard, in the bushes about 30 steps back, on all fours, it was beckoning with its right hand. There. The enemy's movement and my perception of it were in a lockstep. I spun around. The enemy's arm stretched out like a spear. This lethal weapon aimed at the back of my head brushed my hair at a breakneck speed. With the omniscient view granted by Alice's ward, I managed to avoid it by the skin of my teeth. My hair fanned through the air from the violence of the attack. An attack grazed my cheek and I felt a small sharp pain. It felt like the kiss of death. I switched the flow of my body's blood to a different cycle. The blood running through my veins at a few feet per second transmuted into an imaginary element. My body became a single circuit and my heart transformed into a completely different engine. An unknowable motion of immeasurable heat. A mystic yet untapped by humankind that made me who I am. The fire of life behind all miracles and fables. This is what we mages call magical energy. Set. I turned around, set the enemy in my sights, and held up one hand. My arm was the agent of my will. My lack of experience meant my magecraft would only be possible with the use of vocalizations and gestures. Magical formulae were engraved all over the park. All I had to do was ignite them. I needed I needed to direct the flow of magical energy within my body into each formula. Typically, a mage acts as a conduit. Whether wired or wireless, the mage simply pours magical energy into the formula. Releasing this energy in the form of a projectile, stream, or any number of other methods would usually suffice, but in my case, it was the feeling of my limbs whipping out. Burn. I fought speed with speed. The enemy's arm extended 10 feet forward, became engulfed in flames. It was nighttime at the park, the scene reminiscent of the campfire, but one in which the center of the flames contained a humanoid figure wriggling like a shadow puppet. The flame subsided just as unnaturally as it had ignited. No crackling, no burning smell. You can have the bounded field back. I'll check the remains. After telling this to Alice, I headed toward the motionless figure. I killed it. I killed it. I killed it. Regardless of who my opponent was, I just took someone's life. My throat parched, I swallowed the truth that without this sense of reality, I would have been helpless. So hard and bitter, impossible to swallow, but I tried to anyway. I was unnervingly calm. My heart pounded and my breath felt heavy, but my mind was nonetheless calm. By the time I realized it, the charred remains were already in front of me. Bracing for a counterattack, I carefully examined the corpse. Everything seemed fine. This body lying slumped to the ground was nothing but ash. But something wasn't right. To begin with, its remains didn't smell organic. Not willing to believe my hunch, I took a closer look at the corpse's face. All that greeted me was a featureless white mask or white face of a mannequin. Damn it, they got us again! Screaming, I kicked the mannequin. The corpse crumbled to ash and disappeared with the wind. No, this was no corpse. This was just a puppet, and for all of our efforts to lure the master out, we had once again been tricked by a familiar. My debut, my first test out in the open, will be postponed for another day. Erg. Will I ever pass this test? What? At that moment, I suddenly noticed something familiar in the corner of my eye. Something seemed strange about the slide on the other end of the park. It appeared as though its shadow were larger than it should be. Was I still drunk on the high of battle? It took me a second to realize what it was. Who's there? Calling out was a mistake. Startled by my voice, the figure, wearing a familiar high school uniform, took a step back and then it broke into a sprint. Like someone running for their life. Or should I say, he was doing exactly that. After him, we've been spotted. In a rush, I shouted to my partner, but she hadn't even noticed the third party's presence in the first place. Though it wasn't as if I could move by myself, embarrassingly, the fight had taken more out of me than I had liked. No, he'll get away! We need to catch and eliminate him. There was no time for niceties. For us, being seen here was a matter of life and death. Wait, get back here, you! Shaking off the numbness in my legs, I made for the park's exit. I had to admire his escape. The witness, party to the entire night's proceedings, had disappeared into the darkness of the residential district without a trace. Why the hell didn't I sense him in the field? Complaining to myself wouldn't bring back the figure in uniform. Bitter at my own incompetence, I gave up the chase. Though temporary, the park had become Alice's woods. For anyone within a few feet of the park, other park goers' identifiable features and voices became murky, like the stuff of fairy tales. Tonight's proceedings may have had a witness, but if our identities were still hidden, then this was still a chance. That looked like a melt from behind. I returned to the park. The uniform was, without a doubt, from my high school. That was clue enough. If he was a schoolmate of mine, I had plenty of methods to flush him out. It's one thing after another. Amidst my grumbling, I set my priorities straight. Before some strange rumors spread, I needed to seal the witness's mouth shut. That was the highest priority, quickly and without mercy. Looking up, I saw Alice's previously distant figure. Though she was in as much trouble as I was with her existence as a magus also exposed, she had but one thing to say. This means trouble. Her statue-like figure, staring into the darkness, seemed more expressionless and calm. I was pissed off. Her inscrutable voice resembled the moonless night so much it made me angry.
Nope, that was a short one. Yeah, so I titled this stream "The First Rule of Magecraft," and the first rule of Magecraft is you don't talk about Magecraft.
Ah, yes.
Chapter 4, Blues in Her Name. I assume that's supposed to be an apostrophe S for blues, but
There really isn't any other way of saying this. I am a magician. Kind of like those witches in fairy tales who live alone in the woods and perform miracles with the wave of a finger. While the popular depiction of it differs from reality, it's closer to the truth than you know. Though just so we're clear, no, I don't fly through the sky in a broom. I cannot transform into animals or speak with small birds. Modern mages are nothing so fanciful. Our existence sounds unbelievable, but we're quite grounded. Though it may seem like we can do anything, we're actually majorly constrained. And while I still have a lot to learn about it, this is my real job. Sounds a lot more romantic than being a high school student, right? Naturally, this is a secret I don't just share with anyone. A mage must do everything in their power to conceal their work. That is the first and most important of the association's 10 laws. Not that I'm tempted to let the cat out of the bag in the least. My secret identity as an honor student is intact, and absolutely no good would come of me revealing my true nature. If anything, it only leads to more headaches. That's why I do everything in my power to keep it a secret. Of course, if I'd accomplished anything as a magician by now, then maybe I'd see it differently. I fantasize about revealing my secret, life's work to a single special person when I finally make something of myself. Yeah, it'd be pretty stellar to just confess one day, by the way, I'm a magician. The idea alone is enough to keep me from spoiling the big reveal, regardless of the association's rules. My grandfather patted me in the head when I shared these thoughts with him. I don't know if that was a praise or what, but I remember that his touch was gentle. I first learned that I would be succeeding my grandfather on the day I graduated middle school. When I returned home, there he was.
Your elder sister left on a journey. From this day forth, you are the heir to the Aozaki.
He said it in such a matter-of-fact way. I knew that the Aozaki family passed down this old tradition of magecraft, but to be honest, I never imagined I would be the one to wield it. Magecraft is supposed to be passed down to a single child. It was my sister's role to take the mantle, and I had no interest in dedicating myself to so many rules and routines. I planned to live a normal life. I had hopes and dreams for the future. I felt bad for my sister, but I was also determined to live my life my way. And while I imagined do just for that time, do just that for a time, I was blindsided by a vicious counterpunch. Since then, I've been thrust headlong into a world I had only observed from afar. It was a hell of a way to start high school. But I suppose it wasn't all that bad, all things considered. A lot has happened since then. I was so dazed by this newfound life that a year of school motored right by. I was a second year before I knew it. Thankfully, nothing drastic had happened. The 6 months my roommate and I totally tried to kill each other notwithstanding. As it happens, I've got a natural talent at this magic stuff, so I've yet to have any hang-ups there either. I'm only human, so I've had my fair share of headaches for sure, but never once did I worry about my future. I thought my life would be smooth sailing all the way. Only everything had gone to plan last night. Well? Alice Kuonji asked.
Oh, I think
Aoko Aozaki.
we're back to third-person narration. Alice Koenji asked Aoko Aozaki the second she entered the house. Her dark eyes succeeded with where her voice failed to communicate the gravity of the situation. Aoko took off her unflattering coat, hung it on the hanger, and sat down on the sofa. Alice sat across from her, with the table separating them.
Any progress with those things? Not at all. I've only got 7 left that are any good for reconnaissance. I've been using them up fast and haven't had time to make more.
Alice's gaze drifted from Aoko to the box on the table.
Were none of them keeping watch that night? They've never let you down when it comes to this sort of thing, have they? During the day, no. But there is quite the risk of when flying them at night.
Meaning they were of the least use when needed the most, Aoko sighed.
Well, how are you faring? You seem pretty confident this morning. Yeah, I guess everything's good on my end. I'm pretty sure I'll know by tomorrow. I told Tobimaru to look into all the students' addresses and schedules. Not many people wander the park at this time of night, so it should be easy enough to figure out who it was. How can you be so sure? Because I didn't just join the student council to keep up appearances. I've been using my position to keep tabs on everyone. I have info on everything from part-time jobs to friends' addresses to what they're up to in their spare time. It's a list I was hoping to keep secret, but we can't afford to do that now, can we? That's why I keep the vice president around. It's the kind of thing he does best.
Incidentally, the creation of the secret file started the moment Aoko became student council president. The mere rumor of its existence was enough to strike fear into the entire student body.
As thorough as always, I see.
Alice was only mildly surprised. It had been almost 2 years since they first started living together. She knew as well as anyone that when Aoko put her mind to something, she saw it through to the end.
Well, I never imagined I'd have to use it like this, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
But what happened last night was far beyond a mere exception to the rule. This predicament should not have even been possible.
More importantly, have you figured out what went wrong? And don't tell me it had anything to do with your link to the bounded field.
Aoko glared at her. The ward was Alice's responsibility. If it was to blame for last night's trouble, Alice had to own up to her fair share. Alice and Aoko may have been roommates and partners, but it was a relationship of convenience. A lineage had brought them together. They were more like enemies than allies. Ultimately, they were just not a match. Where there was a blunder, it was punished. Where there was an opening, it would be attacked. If there were even an opportunity, the two of them would kill each other in the event of such a moment. Alice locked eyes with Aoko. Aoko's fierce gaze could make a grown man cower in fear, but Alice did not bat an eyelash.
Assuming the bounded field was the problem, wouldn't this have happened countless times before? I suppose you're right.
Aoko agreed, as the question reaffirmed her trust in Alice.
So you're saying that there was nothing wrong with it? I honestly can't say for sure.
Alice answered as flatly as ever. The bounded field is like a sanctuary sealed away from the real world. Steps are taken whereby a certain area is cut off from the outside world. There are various kinds of bounded fields. There are physical ones that close off an area behind a wall, and less tangible ones that use mirrors, mist, or trees to conceal that which occurs within. However, when closing off an area to the outside world, you cannot avoid communicating the abnormality's existence. In other words, the area may be closed off from the outside world, but it is impossible to hide the fact that it is closed off. In time, someone will take interest in a sealed off area, even if they cannot see what is going on inside. Some might say this is putting the cart before the horse. The ideal field would be one that was both undetectable and impervious to interference from the outside. That was exactly the kind Alice had generated in the park the night before.
Even if someone had a reason to be in a place, they shouldn't enter if you've made them forget the reason for being there. It takes an immense amount of time and energy to create a field that produces a temporary illusion around a location you wish to conceal. But they prove extremely effective for at least an hour or so, right? And to top it all, it was a top class, made from your mirrors, and it's not like they shattered while we were using it. The only other presence I felt inside was that of that puppet. And that isn't a perfectly constructed bounded field. I mean, if that isn't a perfectly constructed bounded field, then what is it? I have no idea. The trees are prepared perfectly. I cultivated the trees and plants over several days, and it's always proved to be a reliable field, but maybe, just maybe, there was something I didn't account for.
Though Alice's words conceded the possibility, her eyes expressed her confidence that she had overlooked nothing.
Well, crap. In that case, we better hope that the witness was the puppeteer, which would make sense. A mage would probably be able to penetrate it. Something else bothers me, though. How did he avoid detection?
The thought of being targeted by this individual was pretty terrifying. If they were able to penetrate Alice's field, it could only mean that their skill in magecraft was superior to Alice's. Alice, in her current state, would be completely helpless against such a foe.
I've already determined that it was not a mage. This is most certainly an outsider. The starlings are one thing, but not even Robin was able to follow him. There was no traces of magical energy, so that rules out a magical pawn.
Aoko was quickly running out of straws to grasp at, and that meant she was out of questions to ask. All she could do was call it bad luck and leave it at that.
First you get found out that you're a mage. Then you let the witnesses any of the witness get away? Why couldn't I have had a normal high schooler's problems?
The sofa groaned as she leaned back. Her gaze went up to the brown ceiling with a sigh. It wasn't much of a view. She was becoming increasingly depressed.
Aoko, make up your mind.
Her roommate's voice seemed indifferent. But Aoko just kept staring up at the wooden ceiling.
If you're not up to the task, I can take care of it myself.
The cool-mannered girl's statement carried an equally icy implication. Aoko took the words in slowly with as much sincerity as she could muster. It was like trying to swallow molten lead.
She's right, and I've already made up my mind.
The thought sounded hollow even as it popped into her head. This was clearly different from last time. While the aim was indeed the same, the circumstances surrounding her target were clearly different. She may have been determined before, but that was as a mage. If enemies emerged, she would kill them. If she was challenged, she would step up to fight. It was a fight between two mages, and her opponent was in the wrong. Even if this could only end in death for one of them, it was an outcome both parties could accept. Kill or be killed. Morality had no weight on this scale. But this time was different. Her opponent was neither enemy nor mage. Even if she was prepared to kill them, this person was likely not ready to die. That's why morality did factor into it now. Was she truly up to the task of murdering an innocent person? Could she swallow the fact that this was a common occurrence for a mage? She snorted sardonically. Being a mage did not mean that Aoko was some kind of monk who could cut ties with the real world on a whim. There was only one thing Aoko hated. It was doing things without conviction or an understanding of exactly why she was doing them. When she acted, she preferred to act decisively.
I guess I don't have any other choice.
As she said it, she got up from the sofa, having her fill of the ceiling for one day. Aoko returned to the Aoko of always, and Alice was done probing her.
Take this.
As if to reward her, Alice produced a small bottle. It fit neatly in the palm of her hand. The bottle looked completely out of place in her slender fingers. The glass was cloudy and it appeared empty. Some shreds of paper remained on the front where there was once a label.
What's that?
Aoko stared at the bottle suspiciously.
It's a storage bottle. I have one to spare, so I'm giving it to you. A what? I forgot what it's called. It's a thing out of a Chinese novel.
Aoko was miraculously able to parse what Alice meant.
Are you saying that this is the red drinking gourd from the story about the two brothers who guarded the Lotus Cave? Don't take this the wrong way, but it looks like your everyday medicine bottle with the label ripped off.
Alice looked at the bottle and acknowledged how ordinary it looked. She also understood that she would not be the one using it as she set it on the table.
Except this is a jade flask, not a red drinking gourd. That's not the problem. The problem is maintaining my dignity as a mage. Don't get stuck on the details. Just be happy it's not a bottle of laxatives. Fine.
She made a good point.
Just open the lid and ask for the person's name. But be careful, because if the target is resistant, the bottle will shatter.
Aoko raised her eyebrows.
Hang on, if he's resistant, I can only use it when he's asleep, right? I've never tried it, to be honest. But is there anyone who responds to things in their sleep? You'd be surprised. But true, people like that are rare.
In that case, one would have to weaken them until they were about to pass out.
Oh, I almost forgot. Drugs or magecraft will also cause the bottle to break. Then what good is it? What won't break the damn thing? A tool is only as good as the person using it.
Alice turned away as she replied, as if the topic no longer mattered to her.
I know you're fond of using dainty tools like this. Is it a hobby of yours or something?
Aoko asked, hoping Alice would deny it.
Perhaps. So, are you going to take it or leave it?
Without answering, Aoko dithered a bit before taking the bottle and putting it in her pocket. She figured she might be able to find some use for it. I've seen that gourd come up once or twice in anime. Like there was a filler episode of the original Dragon Ball that featured it. 2 hours had passed and the clock struck 9. Their conversation had moved from the drawing room to the sunroom and had manifested into the kind of scene one would not expect in such a mansion.
To be honest, I didn't really want to leave it to Tobimaru like this.
A hot earthenware pot sat on the table. Aoko spat out complaints to no one in particular as she plucked food from it with her chopsticks. Tonight they were eating a traditional Japanese meal that looked out of place in this mansion. When it came to the kind of Japanese hot pot where all one had to do was buy and boil ingredients, it was usually Aoko's responsibility. Alice sat across from Aoko as she silently poked at the pot with a fork.
Yamashiro made it a point to say that Shizuki had enjoyed a club. It's not like I have time or energy to keep track of every single student.
The egg she had plucked was still as silky as a baby's bottom, so she returned it to the pot. She settled for the shirataki noodles instead.
I already know that the idiot is constantly busy with his jobs. That's why I tried my best to set him up with a club activity captain that'd be accommodating. But the nerve of the guy, not even a thanks. Are you even listening, Alice?
As if her mouth was full, she simply nodded in response. Her expression stated that she had no interest in nor opinion on the matter, but she at least appeared to be listening. Satisfied, Aoko nibbled on some hanpen fish cake.
I just can't trust anyone who says he's a great guy. Surprise, even Tobimaru was gushing about him. The only thing he's great at is being an airhead. I mean, there's really something wrong with his brain if he didn't get angry after what I said.
Her thoughts went to what happened in the student council room earlier that day. She remembered how non-responsive Sojiro had been to her words. His unconcerned face alone was enough for her to swallow the rest of her hanpan without chewing it.
I thought you would understand, he says, ha!
Wait, oh. His words were a lot like those that ended her childhood.
You know it, don't you, Aoko? Through it all, you never lose sight of who you are. You're so strong.
Perhaps it was meant as a compliment, but she took it as patronizing way to pity her, because the person who said it had acted like she was looking at a wounded animal.
Whatever, who cares about what a weirdo thinks or says?
That episode might have made her the most confused when she'd ever been in her life. Yet, what shocked young Aoko the most was it's a typo, I think. The look of pity on the face of the person she admitted the most.
You fought. Huh?
The abrupt comments stopped her in her tracks.
Sorry, what'd you say? Something about a fight?
Alice nodded.
I can't say I completely understand from what you've said. But it does come across as if you were trying to pick a fight with him.
Alice bit into her very last hanpen. Her remark was unexpected, but completely on point.
What? Why'd you go there? I'd rather die than spend another second with him. I mean, seriously, gross. I have no interest in him whatsoever. I'd love it if I never had to say anything about him ever again. So, why all the talk about him? What? I was just reporting on today's investigation. Something wrong with that?
What other reason could Alice be suggesting Aoko had for bringing it up? It would be several hours later in bed that Aoko realized that she had dug her own grave.
Oh, not really. But, does he really bother you that much?
Alice ate her hot pot in silence as if she was honoring some sort of sacred ritual. Her face was indifferent as always, but she was secretly enjoying how flustered Aoko was. Aoko was none the wiser to this. Normally she would have noticed immediately, but she was not quite herself at this moment.
Does he really? Well, of course he does. I think I said that often enough.
Okay.
What specifically about him do you dislike? Huh? I don't need a specific reason to...
She trailed off as she finally realized how disagreeable she was being.
Hmm?
She came up with no reason why. Her instincts had told her that she was incompatible with that hick. Why such a strong a reaction? More than anything in the world, Aoko hated emotions without reason and decisions made with no rationale.
I just don't like him. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, I think.
She became more flustered the more she talked. Unfortunately for her, she could not come up with a coherent reason to hate Sojiro Shizuki. It was not his fault that he had zero common sense. It was the fault of the environment he grew up in. In fact, it was admirable that he was trying so hard to adapt to civilized society. As clueless as he might seem, he was not a complete waste of space. If he seemed a bit slow, it was only because his gentle nature compelled him to think before acting. When one looked at everything objectively, the conclusion was obvious. As much as she was loath to admit it, he really was the good guy everyone had him pegged as.
I can't believe what I'm thinking. Is there really nothing wrong with him?
There was plenty, so she left it at that for now. The chopsticks she had been using came to a stop. She was getting very annoyed. An irrational hatred burned through her head. Unable to come to terms with her feelings, she desperately tried to analyze Sojiro, but her mind only went in more circles. Alice fixed Aoko with a deadpan stare.
I'm shocked.
A small sigh.
This isn't like you.
Those words were the final blow. Aoko left the floor. I felt the floor fall out from under her. She was unable to leave her chair until long after Alice had finished eating and left. However, even after getting knocked down, Aoko Aozaki was not one to be kept that way. She made short work of clearing up after dinner, and after conceding the first bath of the night to Alice, left the drawing room. Since it was customary in these sorts of mansions to turn the lights off when leaving an empty room, the only lit areas of the house were the drawing room and the two girls' bedrooms. The upstairs was enveloped in darkness. Aoko briskly made her way to the deepest part of the east wing along the long corridor, illuminated only by the light of the moon, and arrived at her room.
All being said, sneak attacks make me sick to my stomach.
She had been considering this on the way down the corridor, or perhaps ever since she left the drawing room. The moment she entered her room, she drew her proverbial line in the sand.
If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it face to face. I'll give it to him straight.
This was not a concession driven by feelings or sympathy or compassion. For her, this was simply the way things ought to be.
Okay, with that out of the way,
After settling her resolve, she headed to the study next door.
let's see. Thursday shelf, winter solstice, green spine.
Without hesitating, she removed one book from the countless volumes on the shelf. The introductory textbooks transported here from the Aozaki residence were separated into 6 shelves, labeled Monday to Saturday. Aoko had organized the books by topic, genre, and purpose, and had more or less memorized exactly what was in her personal library. Referencing any of this material took her no time at all, as was befitting the role of the keeper of the study. Though the keeper's fiefdom was nothing more than a small room, both Aoko and Alice had given up all hope on the cluttered mess of a library in the annex. Nevertheless, on occasion, Aoko would have no option other than to give Alice a heads up and visit it when the study did not meet her needs.
I really hope I don't have to go over there now.
Aoko placed the thick green book down and took a seat. The desk she sat at was sturdy but uninviting. It wasn't the sort of furniture girls her age grew attached to, but she liked its minimalist elegance nonetheless. She flipped lightly through the book's old worn pages.
I still can't manage anything like Alice's Bounded Field. I guess I'll just have to find a place off the beaten track. The mountains, the woods, the school building empty at night.
She was looking for a place that would be, except for the worst of luck, void of people, allowing her to forego the use of magecraft.
Walls of thorns and magical mists are so indirect. I want to cut off any route of escape. I need someplace. Flashy and obvious, both in purpose and in looks.
Muttering about how had been some basic spell that muttering about how there had been some basic spell that fit her needs. There had to be some basic spell. She continued to flip through the pages. It goes without saying that she was looking for a way to deal with the witness from the previous night. Magecraft's uses were many, but not all-encompassing. Fundamentally, Magecraft was good for making things or phenomena that existed already, while more or less bypassing the time and resources conventional means would require. It was, however, unable to manifest phenomena that were impossible in this world. It was essentially an equivalent exchange that uses a variety of shortcuts. Phenomenon made possible by human hands, actualized by an individual's power, That was generally what magecraft was. To give a simple example, if Aoko were so inclined, she could make an entire lake appear at the mansion. However, it had to be something that existed within this world. Nothing, nor even the smallest, not even the smallest matter, could escape this unbreakable law. Even if Aoko were to release a level of heat on par with an F-15 fighter jet's afterburner, that event would only be possible if the circuit named Aoko Aozaki acted as a temporary input variable in a magic formula. Derived equivalence was simply a value that already occurred in reality. If the variable in the equation did not exist elsewhere in reality, the spell would not be valid. The imaginary element, known as magical energy, was like a lie that could only slip into its fantasy through a network of order at the moment of ignition. Giving form to the non-existent illusions, invading reality was something the universe did not allow.
Still, what was it? You can combine the imaginary elements either with pretty much anything else since it's not real itself?
Anything composed entirely of magical energy is little more than an illusion and will quickly dissipate. Even a typical field, like a wall of thorns, generally starts with the user planting the thorns first before using magical energy to grow and strengthen them in an instant. In the end, magical energy is just an easy-to-use fuel source, while acting as a firework that ignites a phenomenon.
Or so they say. Imaginary elements are all well and good, but all I can do is connect a basic circuit and process magical energy into a projectile.
Laughing to herself, she looked for a bounded field or something similar, more suited to her current ability. The identity of the witness was still unknown, but if they were a classmate of Aoko's, she had any number of pretexts by which to lure them out. The problem was after that.
Question of precision. If I don't take care of him in one blow, he might slip away.
To be honest, she wasn't confident she could handle this smoothly without Alice's support. But Aoko saw no reason to ask for help given that the target in question was a regular bystander. Fledgling as she was, she still had her pride as a mage. She continued to turn through the pages rhythmically. In the midst of the fluttering sounds of thumbing through the volume, Aoko suddenly stopped her finger at a certain page.
Found it.
She smiled to herself. It was a simple formula that she had tucked away somewhere in the recesses of her memory. A spell of simple destruction.
A cage. I need to make a cage. It's the oldest trick in the book. Any hunter worth their salt would use.
She placed the bookmark in the book, closed it, and got up to return to her room. Suddenly she felt someone watching her. Through the window she saw her in the night, a girl staring back with a cold-hearted expression. The girl's face was hers, the expression undoubtedly her own. She began planning how to erase the witness. Though to say it was something as elaborate as a plan was overkill. This was just a job. She was going to make a cage and then lure her prey into it. There was no getting around it. Premeditated violence.
I wonder if Alice is done with her bath.
Spoken in the hope a bath would return some warmth to her chilled heart. About 20 minutes had passed since she gave Alice the privilege of the first of the hot water. Alice tended to bathe quickly, finishing well under 10 minutes. Her roommate was the type that could not understand the spirit of the bath, treating it as nothing more than a necessity for looking after one's body. For Alice, the concept of staying at a hot spring inn sounded more like a chore than anything, though in this regard, Aoko had to agree.
I guess it's my time to... Huh? Is that the drawing room light on?
It was unusual for Alice to sit in the drawing room after her bath. On nights when she had nothing to discuss, it was her style to return directly to her bedroom.
Alice, are you in here?
By the way, I like Alice's casual clothes. Yeah. Alice nodded. With no book in hand, it appeared that Alice had been waiting for Aoko.
So that's how it is. She really has no faith in me, does she?
Aoko scratched her head in exasperation. Was it that Alice was worried about her or had no faith in her? Her expression was so calm, Aoko could hardly figure what she was thinking.
I have a plan. Want to hear it? I can tell what it is by the look on your face. It's good that you're no longer wavering, but you must do something about that face, that tell of yours, Aoko.
Alice let out a small sigh. It was unusual for Alice to make such a display of her disappointment.
I don't like sneaky attacks, so I'm going to do it fairly, and only after I've told him why straight to his face. That way, there will be absolutely no trouble later. Any complaints? Why would I have any? This is really only a matter of personal preference after all. However, you're worried that I'll mess up, right? My accuracy hasn't exactly been stellar lately, so I was thinking about how to cover my bases with the location. I can't throw up a field like you, so I was thinking of doing it somewhere where you physically can't escape. Any ideas?
Alice nodded in thought. The finger that gently rested on her lips indicated that the question was to her liking.
What about mirrors? You could easily seal him in a house of mirrors for all eternity. Seriously? That's your idea?
She frowned at Alice's bad taste. It was the kind of idea her roommates found to be inspired, but Aoko knew it was out of the question. Aoko was looking for a natural bounded field she could prepare, not a realm bordering on true magic that she couldn't create to begin with.
Then you'll choose otherwise, I suppose. But please, whatever you do, do not bring him here.
Oh yeah, by the way, it's been a while. I brought this up during Fate's Day Night, but what the fan translation of Fate's Day Night referred to as sorcery is referred to in official translations as true magic. So,
Hmm?
yeah, it's something to keep in mind.
You don't need to tell me that. But actually, yeah. A house of mirrors might actually work.
Aoko smirked and shifted her balance away from the wall where she was resting on.
Thanks, Alice. I just figured out the whole plan. I guess it's always best to talk to someone when you're in a bind.
Now in a good mood, Aoko retreated from the drawing room. Alice tried and failed to visualize what kind of blueprint Aoko had drawn up in her mind, but whatever it was, it appeared to be the thorough kind Aoko was good at. Aoko headed for the bathroom, humming to herself as she went. A year and a half of sharing a living space had taught Alice something. When Aoko Aozaki was in this good of a mood, only deep trouble could follow.
Hmm? You want to know if I'm okay with letting Aoko handle this on her own?
It was unclear how long the bird had been in the drawing room. Chirping at Alice, the robin-like bird pranced across the furniture as if it were its property.
Yes, I suppose. She said that she wanted to do it alone, and I do want her to know that she has my every faith. Still.
The girl in black raised her arm. The bird, chirping once again, alighted on her outstretched, affectionate finger.
Suffice to say, trust and faith are two very different things.
The bird puffed out its stout chest in agreement. And Aoko was none the wiser to her roommate's rather unsettling comments. The following day was a typically overcast one. The day's classes ended as they had started, uneventfully. Winter break was just around the corner, and with it, final exams. Although Misaki High prided itself on discipline, it was still a private school, and as such, promoted a culture of independence among its students. Industrious students had a place to explore outside of themselves under the guardianship of the student council president. More easygoing students could spend their time after school as they wished, as long as they were mindful of personal responsibility. The fact that the poster boy of independence was student council vice president indicated just how vast the spectrum was.
Yoo-hoo, Aozaki!
Oh, no. Yoo-hoo, Aozaki! Tobimaru Tsukiji threw open the door to the satellite student council room, the rumored location for their secret meetings. Despite all appearances, he was the student council vice president, who also happened to be the poor soul responsible for executing the student council's dirty work. One person was waiting for him in the cramped room. The student council president, Aoko Aozaki, sat imperiously in a folding chair, glaring at Tobimaru in his boisterous entrance. This room is freezing as usual. We should really buy a heater. So as not to succumb to Aoko's oppressive silence, Tobimaru opened with some casual small talk.
Thank you for coming. Let's get down to business. Do you know why I've asked you here?
I have an idea. What's up with the formality, Aozaki? Pretty harsh to talk shop right away all the time, you know. Tobimaru closed the door and sat across from Aoko. He was holding a blue envelope.
Yeah, and loose lips sink ships. Might remember that once you get onto the real world.
Alright, I'll remember. Wait a sec. Nice try. Tobimaru was halfway to agreeing with Aoko before he caught himself and began to shake his head. As much as Tobimaru enjoyed the lack of red tape in his new line of work, he was not ready to turn full spy on his first day on the job.
So then, are you done with your investigation?
Yeah, I finished the last interview just now. The details are in the envelope along with the file you gave me. He tossed the envelope onto the table.
Good.
Aoko picked up and began to scan through the documents that were inside. She entered her own little world, not sparing the slightest bit of attention for Tobimaru. If ignoring other people were a skill, she would be a master at it. Ahem.
What?
I just wanted to ask one thing.
Yeah, and?
The room was filled with a chilling silence. Aoko continued reading without an ounce of emotion on her face. Though Tobimaru kept up an air of indifference, his stare remained fixed intently on her. Do you get a kick out of doing this kind of thing, Aozaki?
Of course not. What's so fun about gathering intel I hardly even get to use?
Right. Just wanted to check. Whether or not he was convinced, Tobimaru stood up from his chair with a disappointed expression. You'll figure this out just by reading it all, but I wasn't able to dig up anything conclusive. By all indications, there weren't any students in the area the day before yesterday. It's not like I could say that for sure, though. No longer concerned over his task, Tobimaru headed toward the door, as if to say it was out of his hands. Oh, and one more thing. There's one student that wasn't included in your dragnet. You forgot to include any out-of-term transfers. Aoko raised her head ever so slightly. He was right. The recent transfer student was not included within the scope of her investigation. So I haven't looked into Sono-ji. Though considering it's him, it's safe to assume he was working late. Or wait, it would be if he hadn't mentioned something about seeing a murder or whatever. I told him that it was probably just a bad dream. Tobimaru cheerfully left the student council room.
What?
Simultaneously, Aoko felt her fingers go numb. The documents she was holding spilled all over the table.
It can't be. That's not possible.
She broke out into a cold sweat and tried to tell herself that there must be some kind of mistake. However, the uncomfortable feeling in her gut would simply not go away, perhaps because her intuition was almost always right at times like these.
You gotta be kidding me.
And yet, she knew what she had to do. She would not have hesitated to kill Tobimaru if he had been the witness. But if it was him? Just considering the possibility caused her blood to run cold. Aoko put her forehead in her hands and began to brood. And then, suddenly... Let us talk choice. You will always be faced with choices. A virtuous fool and a wicked sage. You cannot save both. You must pick one. That is the freedom granted to you. 2 years earlier, Aoko muttered the words offered by her grandfather the day she replaced her elder sister as his successor, and let out a sigh of lament.
This has to be a joke.
She laughed at her own intuition, but it was no joke. If only those words had never been said. Aoko locked up the student council room and left for the day. Calmly, as though nothing untoward had happened, she greeted the students as they passed her in the halls. She was almost shocked by how natural she seemed. There were still plenty of students at the school. The grounds were noisy with the chattering of students that had finished the day, but had yet to head home. Others still had club activities. The gray sky looked ready to pour, but nobody seemed to pay it any mind. Amidst the clamor, Aoko hastened to the school gate. She passed by some students in animated conversation. Seemed to be talking about their after-school plans. Apparently, they were adamant about maximizing their free time. She could not figure out how they could possibly be so irresponsibly focused on fun, but at the same time, was in no mood to make fun of her or feel envious of them. 2 short years prior, she had been just like them.
I wonder if I'm becoming desensitized to it all.
She retied her scarf, this time more tightly, to give off an air of solitude, but she was fooling no one. After all, what people who feign solitude are really masking is rejection.
Solitude, rejection. They're two sides of the same coin.
The air by the school gate was busier than usual. A group of boys appeared to be huddled behind it. Their transparent attempts to be discreet in terms of both location and loudness of voice did nothing to hide the fact that they were noisily arguing about a girl standing alone on the other side of the street. The girl was cloaked in a black cape. At first glance, it could have been mistaken for a normal attire, but those from Misaki could tell she wore the uniform of a prestigious girls' school. Said school had no connection to Misaki High in any way, shape, or form. The two schools were miles apart, both physically and spiritually. A member of that school's student body was a rare sighting, as the majority were forced to live in the school dorm. Rayan Girls Academy had a reputation as a school for princesses. It was rare indeed for one to be slumming with the common folk. And I believe that is the same girls' school from Tsukihime.
Ooh.
That alone would have been enough to cause a ruckus among the boys, but this girl looked the epitome of class. One could not help but describe the standing figure as charming. The way she silently and motionlessly waited was reminiscent of a meticulously composed portrait. Aoko took one look at her before instantly recalling that one word, solitude.
Okay, you lame brains. Don't you have anywhere better to be?
Disgusted, Aoko barged through the gate. At this point, she would normally head home, but today she crossed the street towards the waiting girl. Oh crap, that's the student council president? Damn, she's trying to chase her away. Let the girl be. She has a right to stand there if she wants to. She's gonna go nuclear. The president versus the angel. What gives, man? Who cares if she's from another school? She's not even in the school property, right? Right, guys? Don't mess with Madame Aoko. You're just asking to get smacked.
Aw.
The boys ran their mouths behind her back. Not in the mood to shut them up, Aoko walked right up to the girl and offered an informal wave.
Something the matter, Alice? I told you before, there's nothing of interest for you here.
For real? Aoko heard the boys at the gate lose their collective minds and did her best to ignore them.
I wanted to be sure, but... Aoko? Those people are a nuisance.
You think?
You think? I'll chase them off.
In contrast to Alice's small voice, Aoko spoke loud and clear. Naturally, this was on purpose, as to deal with the riffraff by the gate all at once. Crap, she's coming this way. Hey, stop pushing me. Move it. I'm out. But doesn't it look like they're tight? Maybe we could get the press to introduce us. Rookie mistake. You still haven't experienced the realities of the battlefield. On second thought, don't let dreams be dreams. It's your funeral. Perhaps because too many of them had gathered in one place, the mob entered a frenzied panic as they tried to escape. Aoko addressed them all.
Well, well, what do we have here? If it isn't the Go Home Early Club. Would you mind telling me what you're all doing gathered in a place like this with no club activities to attend?
Yeep. The student council president stared daggers at the boys.
In any case, exams are coming up. I'm sure... It sure would be horrible if, instead of going home to study, you were loitering around just to ogle another school student, now wouldn't it? It's not like a single one of you had the guts to even go up to her and say something.
Not one of them was brave enough to admit that this hit the nail on the head. If any of them had such courage, they would have already been chatting with the young lady up. I think I forgot something in the classroom. If I'd known it was going to end like this, I would have at least gone down trying. What if we go borrow binoculars from the astronomy club? I'm sure we could get a good view of the roof. The astronomy club doesn't have binoculars, dummy. If anyone does, it would be the Wild Bird Society. Haha, the press destroyed those last month. If you have enough time for bird watching, you should have enough time to find a girlfriend, chicken. Find a girlfriend? Sorry, Zaki, I'm gonna cut out through the back exit. I got a jet too. Later, Prez. See you tomorrow. With those also charming remarks, the boys scatter with their tails between their legs.
You seem to be enjoying yourself, Aoko. How could you tell?
Ako's response slipped out all too easily. In truth, there were not that many bad apples at Misaki High, and dealing with them wasn't really that bad.
So, what brings you down here? Did you find something out? I identified traces of the witness from within the field. All we need to do now is put a name to them. I see. Alice, how long have you been waiting here? Since school was dismissed.
So she had been there for roughly an hour. Sitting in the same place for an hour would be taxing for someone as sensitive to the cold as Alice.
I'm sorry. If you would have told me... Don't be. I'm just doing it because I wanted to.
As she spoke, her black eyes were fixed upon the gate and the students passing through it. She had likely been observing the gate in this manner for the past hour.
You weren't waiting for me, were you? Well, I'm here now anyway, so we can go.
Alice nodded in assent. If Alice was still here, it meant she had not found the witness yet. If she had found the student, Alice would have already gone home ahead of Aoko, and begun to research the student's background.
Nothing came up on my end.
She reported the results of Tobimaru's investigation. Alice remained silent. The conversation ended, leaving the two to silently endure the freezing wind. The silent stakeout dragged on endlessly. The students continued to pass the gate, each shocked at the sight of the unusual combo, and head home. After 20 minutes, Aoko let a sigh escape her mouth, perhaps from boredom, perhaps from cold, or perhaps from both.
Hey, on our way home, do you want to drop by Dawn?
Aoko quickly turned to Alice to catch her reaction. Dawn was the name of one of Ako's favorite coffee shops. Offering no clear indication as to whether she was critical of Ako's blasé attitude or agreeing to her whims, Alice's gaze shifted over ever so slightly. Aoko followed her stare. Hey, Ozaki,
Hey.
you meeting someone here too? The sudden voice took her off guard. There was only one person who spoke with this gentle, good-natured tone.
Of course it'd be him.
Turning her back to Alice, Aoko moved her focus to the newly appeared student. Can I help you with something? All politeness flew out the window. Already in a bad mood, Aoko's mood plummeted the longer she looked at Sojiro. The subtlety of her expression, however, was lost on him. Oh, that was her asking. Okay. No thanks, I was just on my way to the station to meet the swimming club captain, and I wanted to say thanks.
Hmm?
Well, that was completely unexpected. Thanks. Joining a club. Aoko had a hunch that he was able to say something brainless. He was about to say something brainless.
And by thanks, you mean payback, right?
Fortunately, Sojiro was completely unaware of the more sinister implications of the word payback. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but it's no big deal. It's just that the swimming club captain said that the club doesn't get that busy until summer. Sojiro was just about to thank her for recommending a club that would not take up much of his time, when Aoko cut him off with an expression of disinterest.
Well, of course, I couldn't very well introduce you to a club that I knew you would never turn up to. All I did was mention some that even someone as busy as you could join.
I see. Very efficient. His open admiration for her sapped Aoko's will to fight. Finding a suitable club and negotiating with its captain couldn't have been efficient use of her time at all. Anyway, you really helped me out. Just wanted to say thanks. Sojiro gratefully dipped his head, but not before the flustered Aoko stopped him.
Give me a break. You're just going to give me a headache if you do that. So, how's the swimming club? Does it seem like a good fit?
An awkwardness infiltrated her previously sharp gaze. Sojiro was able to pick up on the odd change in her behavior, but could not divine its reason. So he simply started what he knew so far and reported the most recent information he had. Oh, I got kicked out of the club already.
What? What? Why?
Aoko instinctively shadowed at it at the unexpected response. Like a human jack-in-the-box. This unexpected development threw her mind in a tizzy, and she momentarily forgot the complicated feelings she had been wrestling with.
But you just said that you were on your way to meet the captain.
Yeah, the captain's taking me to a heated pool in Yashirogi. Sojiro stated this very matter-of-factly to the still reeling Aoko.
I'm not following. Things seem to be going fine. Why would they kick you out?
Oh, that's easy. Because I can't swim. Aoko reached out with her fingers and pinched the bridge of her nose as she processed his answer.
Shizuki, do you remember my question from yesterday? The one where I asked whether you preferred running or swimming? I'm confident that I remember your answer, but please repeat it to me. You said you preferred swimming, right?
Yeah, since I was little, I've always wanted to learn, and I'm already really good at running, so... Her energy spent, Aoko finally understood. Apparently, they would have taken me in and trained me from square one if I were in my first year. Sadly, it sounded like they can't recruit a second year like me who sinks like a rock, especially with only 3 months left in the school year. But the captain was really nice about it and even offered to teach me how to swim. Sojiro's words were spoken from a place of joy, a fact that failed to reach Aoko.
So in other words, I tried to palm off defective goods. I'll never be able to show my face to the swimming club captain again. Wait, but isn't the captain, Shizuki, the swimming club captain is...
She stopped herself short of saying a girl. She was afraid of how that might look, that she might not be able to rein herself in if she started.
You know what? It doesn't matter. I understand now. So you can just go. Far from here, okay? I just can't deal with you right now.
Tobimaru said the same thing, come to think of it. He said that you were unusually tired yesterday and today. Did something happen?
Kind of, but it's fine. It seems to have resolved itself. Anyway, how do I look to you, Shizuki? Do I really look that exhausted?
Why had she asked him this? Blurting out things for no reason and an impulse. That was not usual for Aoko. Perhaps it was because she realized that this would be their last chance to have a normal conversation. After a few moments of contemplation, Sojiro conjured up a grin that cut straight through the tension. Well, I would say you look more lively than you do tired. Like a wolf that's been forced to plow fields for a long time, but is excited to finally go on a hunt again. He seemed so cheerful. Like he was happy for her. Without thinking, Aoko's hand went to her cheeks. If what he said were true, then she was grinning from ear to ear. There was just no way she could have made would have made such a mistake. Anyway, thanks again. See you tomorrow. Perhaps still not comfortable enough to wave to her. He said his goodbye with sincerity in his voice and smile, and took his leave.
Wait, I have a question for you. Then you can go.
Aoko called out after him. Her voice was cold as she admonished herself for having been somewhat affable earlier. Yeah?
This is just a hypothetical question. Let's say you're on the brink of starvation, and right in front of you are two animals also starving. Someone gives you a gun and tells you to shoot one of them. The one on the right is a lion, and the one on the left is a kitten. What do you do?
It was a fable-like moral dilemma, especially in the way in which it was cruel and rather preachy. The kind that if you thought too hard about it, you would never find an answer. Sojiro answered quickly and calmly. I don't think I'd shoot at all. You asked me what I do, right? And come on, all three of us are starving. He was not in the least fazed by the dilemma. He gave the most innocent response, so innocent in fact that it would give anyone pause.
You're going to live a long life, Shizuki.
Oh, you think so? I think that's the first time anyone has ever said that to me. Adorning his face with a smile wholly out of sync with this comment.
What the supposed to mean?
She regretted stopping him. If only she had watched him go, this conversation would have never happened. Sojiro Shizuki made his way down the slope street. Today, just like every day, he probably had to work late again. Only Aoko and Alice remained, with Alice doing what she could to simply blend in.
That harmless hick really throws me for a loop.
Aoko clenched her right fist tightly as she cursed out loud. Anything to prevent herself from screaming at the top of her lungs. Whether the scream would be directed towards Sojiro or toward herself was another matter entirely.
Aoko?
Aoko heard Alice's soft voice behind her. Aoko knew what she was going to say, and she had known it for the entire time. Ever since Alice, having shown no reaction to any of the other students, changed her expression upon seeing Sojiro.
You don't need to say it. It's him, right? The witness.
Her voice was cold as ice. It was the voice of someone talking about a complete stranger. The lion and the kitten. There are pros and cons to choosing either of these animals. The point being that she had asked him to choose one of them. In terms of risk, the lion was the more dangerous choice. The instant the gun was pointed at it, there was a chance it would fight back. Those who chose the lion required more courage, but any sense of guilt that came with holding a gun would be forgotten. Lions are fierce creatures, a poor excuse to shoot an animal perhaps, but one that certainly helped alleviate the guilt. But what about the kitten, the weaker creature? It goes without saying that the kitten would be the easier target of the two, but choosing it would be a disquieting decision for anyone. Even if the kitten had no chance to survive, it was still too senseless to carry out. And to Aoko, Sojiro was that choice.
I knew it was him too.
When she had felt that sinking feeling in the student council room, she ignored it. There's no getting around what must be done, she told herself. Until, that is, Sojiro went and said what he did, causing her resolve to waver. But the discomfort in her chest did not stem from any guilt she may have felt. She could care less for Sojiro. He was weak, and he would be incredibly easy to deal with. Yet for some reason she could not dispel her reservations. A transfer student who moved to the city from the middle of nowhere, with no family to speak of. Few would notice if he were to suddenly disappear compared to a person of some renown. If she were to kill him, it would be as simple as wringing a cat's neck. And it all served to just to piss her off. It was too lucky, like everything was neatly handed to her. She wanted to just drop kick it right into orbit.
I can't believe it. I hate it. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Why am I like this?
Sitting behind her, Alice heard all of the muttering. Nevertheless, she seemed to ignore it and said,
He had something wrapped around his neck.
a wholly unrelated topic. Aoko returned to her senses.
His neck? Yes. I wonder if it had something to do with being rejected by the swimming club.
Alice had put much thought into this, as if it had deeper meaning to her somehow.
Now that you mention it, I saw him wearing the same thing the first time we met. I must have missed it because he always has his collar done up.
The conversation turned to idle nonsense. And though it solved none of the current problems, it did help calm Aoko's frazzled nerves.
Thanks, Alice. I'm good. I'm ready to go. Let's strike while the iron's hot and end this before he spreads any rumors.
Pumped once more, Aoko turns her back to the school gate. For now, they would retire to the mansion and prepare for battle.
Sure. But when and where do you plan to kill him?
She said quietly so as not to be overheard by anyone else. Normally, Aoko had to rein in that side of Alice, out in the open as they were, but this was far from a normal situation.
Tonight, as for the place, we shall meet him in the land of dreams.
She gave a fearless laugh, a strangely pleasant sound, like the kind one would make when meeting their lover. Ooh. Shoot. I was hoping, as you can see there, it's a two-parter, and I was kind of hoping we would hit this one at the end of the stream, but we still got like an hour left, so... Chapter 5, Night of the Witches 1.
Sojiro returned to his apartment on foot, as per routine, under a blanket of clouds in the night sky. The rusty stairs of his apartment building clanged with each step. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see the bicycles parked by the apartment building's outer wall. He debated the pros and cons of a bicycle, how much easier life would be versus the expense, the convenience versus the necessity, but in the end decided one was not right for him just now. Clutching the bag of apples under his arm, he took out the key to his residence.
The bike share would be convenient, but it's not like...
He tilted his head in confusion. More and more, he found himself preoccupied with such random thoughts, when the real issue at hand was deciding what to do with the apples he had received. He placed the paper bag by the sink and switched on the lights. It was just after 10 in the evening. With the end of term exams just around the corner, he had come home an hour earlier than usual. As he made back for the kitchen to pick one of the apples to snack on, he found an envelope stuffed in the mail slot. The envelope had no name, return address, or stamp. Inside was a single piece of paper that had only the sender's name and a short message. There is something we need to talk about tonight. It's important, so I'll be waiting. Needless to say, keep this a secret. A concise set of orders, neatly written. It was signed Aoko Aozaki. She had been considerate enough to enclose a detailed map of the meeting place. Puzzled, he cocked his head to the side and then headed out the door. Afterward, upon the room's sole tenant leaving the premises, the envelope burst into flames and evaporated without a trace, as though it had never existed in the first place. By the late 80s, Japan's post-war economic boom had somewhat stabilized and the city experienced a period of steady growth. The city's modernization marched on, and the Japan Railways train station, a symbol of the new era, neared completion. In Misaki's neighboring town of Yashirogi, a new symbol of its own was about to be born. Yashirogi Bread and Kitsyland. It was Misaki's worst investment. Years later, it would be dubbed the fool's gold of the economic bubble, a relic of a bygone age.
I don't know. I think Misaki's worst investment was the course she spent on Castoria.
Yep, yes indeed. This city lacks... or... is it him?
No, it's just someone saying it. The city lacks aspiration and sophistication.
10 years ago, Yashirogi's renowned Tokitsu Baking Company ran factories all across the nation. Its proprietor was a middle-aged gentleman, then aged 56, by the name of Yurihiko Tokitsu, known affectionately by most as Topan. He took it upon himself to begin development on an estate on the outskirts of Yashirogi and broke ground on a recreational wonderland that he hoped to be the pride of Misaki City. The long-awaited opening came in 1981. After 3 years of investment, this local amusement park, full of all kinds of hopes and dreams, began a short-lived tenure. It covered more than 85 square acres. Its magnificent merry-go-round dazzled all who passed through the park's gates. Its roller coaster twisted and turned about the edges of the park like a writhing Japanese dragon. Its Ferris wheel packed beyond necessity with gimmicks, as said to have tested the limits of modern engineering.
It's perfect, infused with everything an amusement park could ever need.
Old Yurihiko looked upon his creation and smiled. Only boosting his confidence was the fact that its grand opening was staged during a period of prosperity, the springtime of the world. But, in spite of this, they splendidly miscalculate the balance between aspirations and sophistication. Its mascot, Kitsy, was poorly designed and appeared like a cheap knockoff. The park was stuffed to the brim with bread stands. Even its impossible-to-navigate mirror maze seemed out of date from the start.
There are no dreams to be had in Kitsyland, only nightmarish satire.
Numerous trade magazines lambasted Kitsyland's shortcomings, and customer attendance declined. There was even an incident where a 6-year-old strayed from his mother, had an accident, and nearly died. 1986, 5 years after the park opened. The situation had grown from bad to worse, and the park was hemorrhaging money. On top of everything, Yurihiko, who had bet everything on the success of mascot Kitsy, retired, and Kitsyland's operations were officially in trouble. And thus, amidst the scorn of nearly all residents of the area, ended Misaki City's one and only amusement park. What's more, perhaps best described as a footnote to this debacle, the self-proclaimed Parisian artist who designed the mascot, Toki Julich, was said to have snapped his brush in mourning over the closure of the park. Returning to the present, it was midnight, and the Kitty Land of today was a shadow of its former glory. Like a doll abandoned in the corner of a toy box, the lonely park was illuminated only by the light of the town that continued to live around it.
So that's what happened.
Sojiro closed the Yashirogi guidebook that he had picked up on the way here. The story of its history was almost difficult to believe, but he supposed this was what the people referred to as entropy. The park's front gate was unlocked. When he worked here the previous time, the iron fence was locked shut with a rusty chain, but the chain was nowhere to be seen and the gate itself ajar. Following the map drawn in the letter, Sojiro quickly made his way inside.
It sounded urgent, but to meet this late at night? What in the world could she want?
Sojiro complained, quite out of character for him. It was probably because, in spite of his naivety, even he knew that something was amiss. Though the park was abandoned, this was still trespassing. Unlawful entry, larceny, burglary. These were certainly not things or perhaps crimes that Sojiro was proud to do, but...
Sorry, I can't pay you any money. I'm really sorry for coming in for free.
Money, the real reason his conscience was gnawing at him. He clapped his hands in apology towards the statue of Kitsi, on whose eyes the paint had begun to aptly dissolve. Sojiro passed the mascot, bleeding red paint from its eye sockets, and began to walk the night park. The building's colors had faded. The collection of machines was rusted. The man-made residents no longer felt the passage of time. Even the ghosts themselves could not endure the disparity between this forsaken place and its previous grand stature. It was like a fossilized dream. These were the ruins of a paradise both created and abandoned by man and reality. The economy had stabilized, and the standard of living was on the rise. Nobody was overly concerned with the future. These were the remains of a wild and exciting era. His breath turning white to white wisps before him, Sojiro continued through the abandoned amusement park. Though void of human presence, this was not nearly as frightening as the darkness deep in the mountains. City suburbs can take many different forms, but Kittyland was unusual for an amusement park, insomuch that it had been built adjacent to a residential district. The park was surrounded by a forest, but even that, ultimately, was man-made. It was no different from the curtains on a classroom window. If he were to scale the iron fence encircling Kittyland and break through the 20 yards of a forest of trees, he could make it back to the familiar townscape. Though the amusement park tended to arouse dread in the city folk, to Sojiro, it was little different from the commotion and terror of downtown.
I guess that's it.
Central Plaza was as silent as a grave. According to the map, the meeting spot was west of here. Waiting for Sojiro at his destination was a rugged, imposing, magnificent castle towering before the backdrop of the cloudy night sky. Even for an abandoned park, it was a remarkable structure. If the roller coasters and the Ferris wheel were loud, intense attractions, this was, in comparison, quiet and easygoing. It was one of Kittyland's 3 iconic structures, and, in a way, the wicked fortress that guided this paradise down the path of closure. Generally speaking, amusement park mazes generally fell into one of the 2 categories. A labyrinth, which disorients its visitors with its sheer size, and a house of mirrors, which disorients visitors with optical illusions. Many of the labyrinth's guests enjoyed the brief sense of adventure that it afforded. Over the years, however, it would be usurped by the ever-increasing thrills of new attractions, such as the way of all trends, the curse of fads. The new must give way to the newer. On the other hand, the House of Mirrors was a time-honored, beloved staple. Even within the confines of a classroom's dimensions, well-placed mirrors and well-directed lights could both perplex and delight its visitors. And figuring the cost of maintenance, a well-designed House of Mirrors could far outlive its labyrinth brethren. Even if both types fade into obscurity, they would remain a staple of what constituted an amusement park. However, that didn't mean that combining them would produce double the fun. Together, they transform from entertainment into an uncanny realm from which those who dare to step within could never leave. In a similar sense, Kitsy's Mystery Tour Castle was the park's very own otherworld. Indeed, 5% of visitors ended up requesting staff assistance to get out. Modeled after European castles, it was greater than a football field in length, and the interior was further split into 3 floors. 2 floors above ground and 1 below, lined with mirrors from top to bottom, equal parts complex and vast. The maze demanded at least 30 minutes, even from veterans.
That is a hell of a time investment for that.
And yo, that actually sounds kind of fun to me. I would try, even though my sense of direction is horrible. One visit was all it took to be struck by
Catastrophobia? No, catatrophobia. Okay.
Yeah, cataptrophobia for hours. It was this labyrinth that now stood in Sojiro's way.
Looks like it's not entirely pitch black. I guess somebody turned the lights on.
It seemed that Sojiro, unaware of what a House of Mirrors even was, concerned himself only with the lighting. He checked the letter from Aoko once more. The letter read, "I'll be waiting in the first floor lobby of the House of Mirrors." That meeting place was definitely in there. There was something to see at least, as he could just make out light faintly through the open doors. Putting aside his suspicions, he headed towards the entrance. The sound of his steps against the brick-laid path echoed faintly. He was far from the hustle and bustle of the city. The park's clocks no longer made tick nor talk, and the winter's bite no longer blew in the night. From within the silence, the stillness that would cause any onlooker to hold their breath.
Hello?
Sojiro stopped abruptly at the entrance of the House of Mirrors.
By the way, why are you over there, Aozaki?
He called out, turning back toward the plaza. Sound rang out as if someone had dove behind a garbage can and it fell to the ground in their haste. A short silence ensued. For a moment, the abandoned park returned to its previous hush. Resigned to her having been exposed, the girl appeared from her hiding place.
I guess I'll take over for narration now. Ow. His voice died in his throat as he took in sight of the girl's familiar face and unfamiliar attire.
I'm amazed by how many outfit changes this game actually has.
Yeah, that's part of the amazing thing about this game's visuals. They actually give everyone a bunch of different outfits. This Aoko, with her long hair flowing in the breeze, was different from the Aoko that Sojiro knew. The resolute stance and posture she took exuded the strength of her will. She stared directly at him with a sharp-eyed, piercing gaze. Her eyes were glowing with a dim phosphoric light, enough to give Sojiro pause that he might be hallucinating. An icy coldness and a girl's strength. Sojiro lacked a sense of danger, but the sense of imbalance caused even him to feel the malice in the air. It was, it was as though the Yuki Onna spirit of folklore had climbed out from a ghost story and appeared here in reality. Aozaki? Instinctively, Sojiro took a step back. Surprised, he was starting to feel concerned. An unpleasant premonition rose to the surface, bringing with him a sense of anxiety. In spite of this, he felt obliged to honor urban etiquette by seeing if she was all right. Something happened to you? From the look of it, Without acknowledging him, Aoko took a step forward. Her figure, this atmosphere. Sojiro found himself recalling a recent memory. His twisted and knotted apprehension melted away and was replaced with growing realization. The girl before him was very similar to someone he had seen before, the night in the park, though he had only seen her from behind. With increasing certainty causing him to swallow nervously, he noted that they might as well have been identical.
You asked me what I was doing. Well, it's exactly what it looks like. I was waiting for my prey to pass by. Once you went inside, I was going to follow and cut off your only route of escape.
Aoko said, perturbed by the swift change in plans. Phew, so I came to the right place. Sojiro was mightily relieved that he had not gone the wrong place. It was unclear whether he felt confident about dealing with what was to come, or if he had simply failed to grasp the hopelessness of the situation. Aoko ignored his obtuse response and continued.
You know, Shizuki, just like anyone else, some people get on my nerves and some people I just really hate. But the funny thing is, my enemies are never people on my shit list.
Cold emotion burned in her eyes. Her feet had already moved one step closer to Sojiro. Sojiro's sense of foreboding grew stronger. Wondering if what he sensed was bloodlust, he retreated another step. Continuing as so, and maintained a distance of just 15 feet.
As far as I can recall, I never thought of someone I didn't like as an enemy. As it happens, I've even had enemies that I liked. And the reason is simple.
She held her right arm out. The light about her was no illusion.
It's simple, really. Anyone who throws me out of whack is my enemy.
Her arm moved again. It was instantaneous. Something shot past Sojiro in the blink of an eye, missing him by just a foot to his left. Hey! Before his eyes, a blue light, something akin to a fireball, had ignited from nothing. He finally understood what was happening. Wait a second, I've seen one of those before. She ignored his dim-witted reaction.
Damn it, I missed!
Aoko muttered to herself. The fist-sized hole in the blue light had made in the House of Mirrors crackled and smoldered. A shot that could easily cave in a human skull in addition to burning it to a crisp.
Kill myself if Alice saw me miss at this range. But you get it now, right? This is it for you. There won't be a second chance.
Sojiro backed away swiftly. These were beyond the incomprehensible. He was close to losing the ability to think at all. All he could make out was the figure of the dependable student council president, or at least what he had thought was the president, and the memories of the park that night 2 days ago. He never experienced anything like this, though most people living in a civilized country would have never seen anything like it either. A lethal weapon that could kill with nothing more than the pull of a finger had a way of suspending the ability of its target to determine between not just good and evil, but dreams and reality, past and future. And the more peaceful someone's life had been, the stronger that suspension was likely to be. All that one could think about was the fact that they were alive at that very moment. It was as if he was an unwritten character on a blank piece of white paper. There was no before and there was no after. There was only what came next. This was a very common thought process for anyone staring down the barrel of a gun.
Oh, don't bother begging, it's pointless. But feel free to air your grievances. It's a killer's duty to listen to her victim's last words.
By saying it was pointless, she made it sound more like she would not listen to what he had to say. However, Sojiro was in such a state of shock that it did not even enter his mind to speak up. All he knew for reasons unknown was that the girl in front of him wanted him dead. You could have told me, Tobimaru. You said that no such thing exists. Well, how about now, idiot? There's a monster right in front of me. Sojiro felt that he had said that aloud. That if he had said that aloud, the second blast would come even quicker than the last. So he kept it to himself. His mental expletives stirred his mind from paralysis to mere panic. This response came not from confidence, however. Someday, out of the blue, someone's going to kill me. It may have seemed like a baseline belief to hold. Oh, but now that I think about it, murders happen all the time in cities. I should have remembered. You break the rules, you get killed. It's clear to me now.
He's like, oh no, because I broke into this place after hours without any money. I'm gonna get killed.
To Sojiro, the situation seemed to perfectly align with his inexperienced understanding that the city was a coldly pragmatic place. As far as he was concerned in this moment, being killed by a classmate was not something to be so surprised by. In a society where murder was possible, he was able to accept the sort of situation as natural. Virtually no concern was the series of events that led to Aoko's aggression towards him. The only thing that truly confused him was Aoko's blue fireball. Sojiro swallowed with an audible gulp. To anyone who may have been watching, it was the response of a victim paralyzed by fear.
That's right, so you do finally get it. I'm all out of words, so I think it's time you died. I could go on about how magecraft has to stay hidden, but that doesn't really have anything to do with you. All you need to know is that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that it was me who killed you.
Done talking, Aoko once again lifted her right arm. It was a hum like a machine. Blue light began to revolve around her arm beneath her sleeve. This was taking longer than last time, leading Sojiro to believe that it was going to be much stronger than the attack that was still scorching the wall behind him. The realization caused his panic to heighten. No, wait, it's not about me having to die, or the fact that the monster that night was actually Aozaki, or even whether she's part of the church. It's not about any of that. His thoughts became jumbled. His heart pounded like a hammer. This was no time to be standing still. He was not sure if the girl in front of him was really human, and more importantly, even if he could accept the events unfolding before him, when all was said and done. Wait, it's wrong to kill people. Even if it was a fact of life in the city, Sojiro was not about to lie down and die.
Don't you think I know that?
Just wait. Sojiro screamed, still entirely oblivious. It was just the thing to invoke Aoko's full wrath. Ah! Aoko fired a barrage of blue magical bullets. In an instant, Sojiro dashed into the shadows behind him, into the entrance to the House of Mirrors. What the heck was that? He darted feverishly down the hall. After a mere few feet, he was left completely out of breath. This was due to his shock at seeing yet another attack, fiercer than the first, what he'd never seen in his life, and because he couldn't shake the thought that if he had moved even a second later, he would be dead. He could not afford to stop. The sound of merciless footsteps closed in behind him. I bought myself some time. Maybe here I'll be able to figure out something. He threw everything into his legs as he sprinted. A straight, narrow passage about 60 feet long connected the entrance to the main lobby. At this rate, if he could just make it to the lobby, he was sure he would be able to find as many hiding spots as he needed. Thank God. He arrived in a large open space. This was the first floor lobby. There were 3 passageways. One led to the basement floor, one connected to the first floor maze. The other was a set of stairs leading to the second floor. Sojiro did not particularly care which one he chose, so, trusting his intuition, he made a run for the first floor maze when... Ouch! He smacked his head into a transparent wall. Mirror?
That's right, it's annoying, but I guess this makes things fair. The chaser and the chased are on equal ground.
A somehow cheerful voice echoed in his direction. There was no need for Sojiro to even turn around. In the very same mirror he had crashed into, we could see Aoko Aozaki's figure slowly approaching.
You should know. I sealed off the first floor exit deeper inside, physically, not with the bounded field. Is calling it a seal going too far? Maybe plugs or buried works. Either way, if you get too close, you'll be swallowed by a cave-in. I recommend keeping your distance if you don't want to be buried alive.
I was about to say, since this game is actually 16:9, sometimes our models cover stuff up, so it's a little hard to see Aoko down there, so just gotta hide you real quick. Okay. Panicked by the impending footsteps, Sojiro groped for the wall. You could see the stairs on the second floor. He did not understand what Aoko had meant earlier, but he at least knew that the first floor was not going to save him.
It would save me a lot of trouble if you just died that way, though. The cleanup is much easier for accidental deaths.
Behind him was a creature beyond words. As she continued her idle taunting, she lifted her right arm ostentatiously. Even from above her clothes, one could see some kind of strange, incongruous pattern on her body. The veins beneath her skin. They made it seem as though something inhuman was circulating her body. Whether out of pity or repulsion, Sojiro stopped for just a moment. His pursuer evaded his gaze.
You've noticed then. I normally hide it with ointment, but today is special. It's called a magical crest. It's the proof that I'm a mage. You see, this light revolving around me, right? It's the beginning of what formed that snap, those bullets. I'm feeling pretty good today, and I've never felt more confident in how to use my magical energy efficiently. I think I'm good for another 30 bullets or so.
Perhaps she was on an emotional high, for her voice had become frightfully friendly. The substance of the conversation could not have been any more unsettling, however. I don't understand a thing you're saying, Aozaki.
You don't? I'm telling you that I have 30 more shots in the tank. If you can escape before I use them up, it's your win. For today, that is.
For today? You're gonna have to do this tomorrow, too? Sojiro knit his brows. Aoko's expression increased with the scowl at her behavior, although she was panicking. It seems that deep down she still did not feel the weight of the crisis. By the way, like, clever use of mirrors with the mirrored art there, because you see in the reflection that it's her left there instead of her right. She knew he still didn't get it.
I said my piece. Free time is over. I may still have some trash talk left in me, but well, there's never enough time to get it all off my chest. Anyway, just give up already.
It appeared Aoko had prepared this theatrical dialogue ahead of time. Not to allow her opponent time for futile pleading, but to give him the time to curse her, his killer. Such forthrightness was her modus operandi. With this victim, however, it was not going as she had hoped.
Anyway, that's all I have to say. Shall we begin the hunt?
Her voice was void of emotion, and her eyes ruthless as they bored into her prey. This time, Sojiro finally accepted that he was going to die. This is is kind of an interlude thing, so...
Silent as the dead, it stepped into the remnants of a dream that had long since seen no visitors. There was no wind in this night, nor a soul to be seen. Still, it heard the echoes from within clasp its hands together and grinned. Its form, with hands clasped, resembled that of a budding tulip. The bearing of this artificial flower reflected in the cloudy mirror of the ticket attendant's office next to the gate. Next to it stood a display board, corroded by years upon years of rust. Number of visitors today, 2. Number of... today... The board had graffiti crudely scrawled atop one of the words. It was replaced with deaths. The records board had long ago fallen to disrepair. After taking a full 10 seconds to digest what it was looking at, it made its own revision. Number of visitors today, 3. Number of deaths today, 1. After penning this number with its index finger, she smiled like a flower. Then she began to walk towards the source of the sound. I'm guessing it's the lucky lady from the pachinko parlor. She's like, I've been here all day. I can do this now. It's been 10 minutes since this rhapsody had begun to echo from the House of Mirrors. The amusement park's entrance returned to it as it was before, soulless. In the end, even if Sojiro had been the luckiest man alive, there was no way he should have been able to escape. The question, however, was how much of this was by design, and how much was sheer coincidence. Even Aoko, who had made all the arrangements, had no answer. Indeed, there were only 3 things she could say. It was taking longer than expected. He was putting up more of a resistance than she had anticipated. And that choosing the House of Mirrors was a mistake. She had really screwed the pooch in this one. The location itself was an excellent choice, as the House of Mirrors was perfect as a hunting ground, but seeing her own incompetence reflected in the mirrors was beginning to grate on her.
Ah! The moment Aoko's right arm began to glow, Sojiro made a beeline for the staircase in front of him. A strobing series of blue flashes lit the room behind him. The hunter calmly followed her prey, and the prey desperately ran for his life up the stairs.
Just what the doctor ordered. We can't very well let the best laid plans go to waste now, can we?
In stark contrast to Sojiro's frenzied escape, Aoko walked briskly up the stairs. She elected not to run after her prey in order to maintain a set distance. As she lacked confidence in her accuracy, the hardest thing for her to deal with would be if he charged right at her and went down fighting. But at a distance of 30 or so feet, he posed no threat. By the time her prey drew near, she could fire 10 shots and hit with at least 4 of them. Their positioning just a moment ago hadn't been ideal. At that distance, in a space that open, if he flanked and rushed her, there was a chance, however small, that he could turn into a fist fight. Currently, Aoko's best weapon was the bullets from her right arm. She was going to capitalize on that advantage. It was in her best interest not to close the gap between them. If there were a good time to approach, it was only after her prey had become exhausted and had lost the will to continue. Would she pierce his leg, shoot him in the back, or perhaps would he just give up after losing himself in the labyrinth? The hunt would end when her target sustained some sort of injury and became unable to run. On Sojiro's end, he could barely bite back on screaming as he bolted through the maze. Even running in a straight line had become difficult, much less searching for an exit. Ow! The corridor stretched out far before him, or so the mirrors blocking the path had made it seem. Panicked, he made a turn to the right. Ouch! Clutching his head in his right arm, Sojiro led with his left, groping through the air to see whether a wall was there or not. He dove down the hall to the left, narrowly dodging the bullets targeting his life. Urged by the sounds of approaching footsteps, he ran without thinking. The last one close, a hair closer, would have meant his life. He caught the odor of burnt hair from the back of his neck. He was very lucky, or perhaps very unlucky. If he were actually lucky, he would not be in this situation in the first place. The second floor of the house of mirrors was structured like a giant spiral. It wound left, starting from the outside wall. Eventually, it would lead to a dead end. The more he tried to escape, the more cornered he would become, as though he were trapped in a twisted guillotine. Stifled screams threatened to leak out as complaints. No matter what he did, he was going to be killed. All of his struggling merely served to prolong the inevitable. Yet he ran. No matter how many mirrored walls he rammed himself into, he ran. Even after crashing so hard that his forehead bled and he saw stars, he ran. Pain shot through him at every turn. The more frantically he ran, the more intensely he smashed into the invisible walls. His body began to understand the rules and begged him not to run anymore. His breath was already ragged after sprinting a couple hundred feet. No matter how he thought about it, this was not normal. This was too crazy. This was all just a bad joke. If he turned around now, she would apologize to him for taking it too far. His mind had gone blank, and his body continued to slam into the mirrors again and again. His feet slowed as he began to believe that perhaps it really was all a joke, but then he felt a chill. the touch of death upon his neck. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Sojiro knew this kind of terrible chill far too well. Ever since he had arrived in the city, he had come face to face with more than one or two near-death experiences.
Like when he almost jumped out the window.
For someone who did not understand city life, his present predicament was not unlike what he experienced when he experienced the traffic on the streets or the commuter rush on the station platform. He was far from an innocent babe, unable to comprehend life or fear. Rather, everything he had ever known became irrelevant when he was flung into a completely different cultural sphere. Even society's promise of safety, something urbanites took for granted, were threats unknown. So he was used to this already. Though if we were to be honest, he was dissatisfied with some things. Things superfluous to necessity. This world was overflowing with valueless things. They were all dangerous in some way. Even the everyday necessities sold at convenience stores were, as far as he was concerned, amazing tools. Civilization had raised the standard of living so high that it had numbed humanity's sense of danger. The city's constant pursuit of wealth and convenience was a poison to a country boy like Sojiro. And he did not have the capacity to accept these conveniences. That it was possible for such convenience to easily and subtly be misused and cause unintended accidents had always made him anxious. Why? He had to wonder why he was even here. Ah, how ironic. It took the real threat of death to finally make him realize, like a divine revelation, what he'd failed to understand until now. He always had to expect the unexpected. Near-death experiences were more common than one might think. To begin with, safety was something that came at a price. Being alive meant that the opposite was always lurking around the corner. It was just like a street light at night. When the sun rose, its illumination would naturally disappear. Another barrage of strange projectiles whizzed mercilessly by him. He recalled in the back of his mind that the charred remains of someone at the hands of that blue flame 2 nights prior. Somehow the situation reminded him of a horse being led by a dangling carrot. For now he lifted his head and continued to run through the labyrinth. But for what purpose? Though he knew the pain in his chest was very real, he felt disconnected from it. The night sky visible through the skylight was a muddy ultramarine, no longer resembling the one he knew. I managed to calm himself. Sojiro began to laugh in despair, as though something rather precious had been broken. Even though everything had become meaningless anyway. Even so, his legs somehow made their way forward at the sight of her reflection in the mirror. Like a game of cat and mouse, Sojiro fled through the labyrinth of mirrors. Then, after 4 minutes, that strangely unreal tension ended. The nice shot of blue light hit inches away from him. It exploded the moment it made impact, launching Sojiro into the opposite wall. Of all the fire he had taken thus far, the shot indisputably brought him the closest to death. Gah! Groaning, he collapsed to the floor. His back was on fire with pain. He was not bleeding, and was lucky he could still even scream. Yet his body refused to move. Physically and mentally, he still had something to spare. The pain was not so bad that it was preventing him to stand up. It was just that there was a skylight above him, and he could glimpse to the dark of the night sky beyond. The feeling that overcame him was a raw, selfish bout of grief. It was just so cruel. To have to stare at that for the remainder of whatever short life he had left. Sojiro's ragged breath slowed. For all intents and purposes, he had given up. He had given up running away from the sound of pursuing footsteps and perhaps even the problem at the root of everything. Well, at least it was Aozaki who got to kill me. Sojiro Shizuki felt things that in any other circumstances he would never feel. Incidentally, without exaggeration or embellishment, this was the only mistake he had ever made in his entire life. Staring vacantly into the night sky above, Sojiro listened as the footsteps drew nearer.
You give up?
It was the closest her voice had ever been to him. Perhaps feeling that he had really given up, she approached his collapsed form. In the dark, mirror-like corridor, he could not make out her expression. Without a word, Sojiro raised his eyes to meet his murderer.
I suppose if you don't care, you don't have to ask. Or...
Yeah.
You really do throw me off. Most people would ask me why I'm going to kill them right about now.
Aoko spoke from within the shadows. His eyes widened in bewilderment. Now that she had mentioned it, he realized that would have been the obvious question to ask. He had more or less picked up on the fact that he was being killed for learning some secret, but it was human nature to want to know more. That makes sense now that you mention it. A simple affirmation. His face was a mixture of resignation and forlorn longing. He thought for a moment before.
Well, you don't have to say anything.
Oh, no,
I don't want to hear it.
That is his line. But you don't have to say anything. I don't want to hear it. He responded in a mature, subdued voice. His response was clear, rather gallantly so.
I see. I'm still going to kill you. Aren't you scared of dying?
Of course I'm scared. It'll probably hurt. His face turned dry as he objected, to which Aoko frowned. As nonchalant as he could be, he was honest about his feelings.
Of course that would be scary. I'd be scared too, you know. Sorry though, you'll just need to deal with it. It's okay if you call me a monster. That's exactly what I am right now. I guess in that way, I'm just like you. I don't have what you would call normal morals. Helps when I need to murder someone.
Sojiro's finger twitched in response to her indifferent tone, as if to say that, despite having given up on just about everything, his body could not let those words slide. Murder is wrong, you know.
We went through this. I know that already.
Aoko raised her right hand. The light from the crest illuminated her face. It goes without saying, her expression was unchanged. She was not crying, nor was she smiling. She was a young woman who had excised her feelings. Deal with it was another thing Sojiro could not let slide. Sojiro could read on Aoko's face, that she was not herself. She was in pain, and to a degree that he had never seen in her. Sorry, but I guess I do have something to say.
What is it? But don't think you can trick me into letting you go by making me feel bad.
He unconsciously smiled at Aoko's ruthless counter and breathed a sigh of relief. He had misread the pain he saw on her face. This was the same Aoko. Sojiro laughed out loud in genuine joy, a laugh that most other people would have taken as an insult.
I'm starting to regret letting you say your piece. Or should I take that attempt to make fun of me as just that?
No, I'm not laughing at you. I was just wondering if that person over there was a friend of yours, Aozaki. Out of nowhere, Sojiro pointed behind Aoko.
What?
Aoko thought it must have been that old, overused distraction technique. If this had been a Japanese comedy act, this would be the part where she gave him a whack with a paper fan. But after giving it a second thought, she realized Sojiro didn't have the capacity for understanding old or even new tricks.
What are you?
Perhaps his honest disposition had been to his benefit. Without thinking, Aoko gave into her curiosity and turned her gaze towards the direction in which his finger was pointed. And there, something that should not have been there in the maze, something with a creaking wooden smile. It was the ominous, creeping, uncanny figure of a girl. I'm debating about whether or not to end on a cliffhanger here. What do you think? Should we keep going, or?
I mean, up to you, because this is a pretty good cliffhanger, not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
All right.
Like, just look at that.
I was kind of hoping we could get through all of this part, but I think we're only like halfway through it now, so I don't want to be pushing 5 hours for this stream, so we'll end it here. Yep. So yeah, sorry for the sudden cliffhanger, folks, but yep, that's gonna be it for today.
Holy cow, Shizuki, though. Like,
Yeah.
his denseness is just through the roof.
Yep. uh, all right. So thanks for watching, everyone. We'll be back on Saturday next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and I'll see you then.